is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Keljo, the pitch, and it gets away from Weber. And Oregon State's not covering the plate, and scoring from second base is McCarthy.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Been a game changer. This one's out to center field. It is deep. It is. My goodness! That did not just happen.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And now Emick runs it over Rumsey again, and this one will sail out over the batter's eye. Mercy.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
He is ready to go against Vance Honeycutt.
First pitch swinging. Honeycutt on the line to left again.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
The 1-0. Tibbs, right field. Gone!
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Well. It has been a while for me. I think I've had at least a month off because of the banquet, the surgery, the recovery, and then down in Florida last week for memorial for my brother Robert, and then also a nice lengthy stay and vacation. Great to be back. It's doing what it did when I left here. It's raining outside. It's a deluge yet again. I'm David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke on the main desk. I am over here still, possibly, just in case. It's a battle after what I went through.
I got the impression that you are liking being over there.
Yeah, I kind of do.
You sent me a text, when you were on, like when you're sitting at the airport, and this happens to a lot of people, but it happens to you quite a bit. And I appreciate this about you. When you are alone in an airport with your thoughts, you quite often have quite a bit of clarity.
I do.
And
peace and quiet.
You'll say something like, I've been thinking about it. I really kind of like the lounge over there. And I think that's like.
I get the impression you guys like me over here too.
I do.
No.
Am I here?
Yeah. Why this happens, I don't know, but it will get Craig's mic. Go ahead.
Where were we?
How about you liking him over here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, on a day like today, we've got a little heat going on in studio. It's just it's a warm day. Not having another body up here, I think, is kind of nice. But I do sort of like just to not having to turn my neck just directly to my left at all times to talk to somebody. Like, I'm still looking that way. But I do think being spread out's a little bit nicer for everybody. So I'm all for you if you decide to stay over there or whatever configuration. I think we did the 3-man desk for 3 years or something. So if we shake it up a bit, I think it works well, and I'm not opposed to it at all.
We'll see. I got to get used to I like to be able to go in and at least engage at times with the chat room. I haven't really been able to do that, moved over here, but I'll get that fixed up. I'll be in there as soon as I possibly
You're overdue
can.
for that. Like you said, you've been out for like a month now at this point. So I think the chat, you owe them some time to go hang out with the folks in chat because it's been a little while, and maybe you've dipped in from time to time, but
No. I've been. I that's the one thing I did this past week was I probably returned 4 email.
I'm very proud of you.
I did not.
I'm
maybe
very
twice went on there. If anything, just to clear some stuff out.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I'm glad that you're back for one large reason. I kept getting this compliment, which I'm not sure is a good one or not. Paul's doing a great job, but I sure do miss the smokes.
No, that's not. No.
I mean, it depends on who it's coming for.
Yeah,
right.
But
no.
no, we did some look, and it was an opportunity. It's the summertime, so we did a lot of different things. I had, Josh Neighbors on, co-hosted with me 3 hours. Trey Elling did a great job from Austin. He came up on Thursday, and then Monday and Wednesday was me and Garrett. So it was fun.
Well, I'll tell you this. One thing I did not miss was I missed doing the show, but at the same time, I think it got to a point where it was such an overload of legal issues. And I think all of us felt that way. And there's it doesn't mean it's going to stop, but it was nice to step back and not okay, I got to read this article. I got to read this. I watched what was being said or reported, but I did not miss whatsoever what has become kind of a turmoil in college athletics.
6 days went by, and I didn't even notice. It felt like 2. I was so just separated in my head from what was actually going on, and I know it wasn't a particularly busy week, so sorry for that, Paul, although there's things to talk about. But, I definitely was able to clear my head a bit, and you do step back and you realize, this is just so stupid. All these legal cases, they matter, but, it's nice to get a break from them, and there towards the end, especially because the House settlement was happening, and, every website's churning out legal thing after legal thing. It's it was good to step away from it and just, as Paul said yesterday, talk ball. Actually talk, win totals and things, and also just some various other stuff. But, I'm sure there'll be another stretch where there's things like that ramp up, but I think we hit the timing right of, all that sort of happened and then situated itself and fizzled right as we kind of exited, and we come back and it's all it's not any clearer what's going to look like in 5 years from now, but it's just not so on the forefront. Florida State's still being the moaning, of course. That's still out there. That's not going to go away. That's a totally different matter, and that's its own thing. But the legal stuff definitely was a thing that was starting to become a bit of a, I don't know, I don't know what the right term for it is. Not an albatross, but
it is. No, it kind of is.
Yeah,
albatross is good. And I had a lot of those people on. I had Mitt Winter on. I had Doug Rohan from Rohan Law, who does a lot of stuff. Have you seen on the FSU case?
Right.
And he's an alum like me, but he is, inside on it. That was very good. So, but you do get it. And so that's why Friday I said, let's compile all the things that we've done that are actually us talking about the football, the predictions, the different things that you do in the offseason. And that show did really well, because I do think that as much as the audience wants to hear about the current news, most of them just want to be do you think Tech is going to win 9 or 10 games? That's what they want to know. Yeah. Those kind of things.
I agree. I did. And that's what we'll do here in a minute. We're going to go over what Vegas says about wins and losses. There's different type of people who have their odds on wins. Paul's put together his preseason Big 12 team rankings. I did mine last night. Craig, I think all that is due by the end of the day. So I'll do mine tomorrow. Paul does his today. Then Craig can have his available on Thursday. Garrett Ross, Emery Winter are in the studio, and it's great to be back, 365 Sports. Now, here are the win totals per Vegas in the Big 12. And I thought we would start. There's a couple of stories, including the hot dog eating contest controversy that Craig will probably hit during Off the Radar. Here are the win totals in the Big 12. This is in alphabetical order, not by numerical order. But if you look at Arizona State, all the way down to West Virginia, there's 2 teams that kind of jump out of the pack, and those are the 2 that a lot of people feel like might win the Big 12 title. That's Utah and K-State, both at 9.5. Kansas is at 8, of course, with Jalen Daniels and Leipold, what he's done. And there's a big mixture from 7.5 on down. I did mine, and I sat down because Joni Lehman went out, who's media relations for the last time coming up at the media days in July, reminded us that everything needed to be in by today. And so I went, golly, I'm trying to, really yesterday was more playing catch up with various things I needed to do. And then all of a sudden, it fell together for me rather easily. And the only questions I had was okay, what about 5 through 8? But there we are with the Big 12. based on Vegas, the win totals?
I think this league, and I think a lot of people do, is going to be very close. And the difference between 5 and 11 is not going to be that much to me. Like it's going to come down to how it shakes, how the,
who wins those 3 games
who does something that they're not supposed to do, what happens? Does that happen a lot? How close is this league really? We think it's going to be, but it may not be. Look, Kansas State might go 13-0, and roll through. Or someone like that. Oh, Utah, look, Kansas, if Jalen Daniels is healthy, could rattle off something, but I don't think that's really that realistic, but we don't know. So when I did my, and you'll see my standings later on, but yeah, it was hard. The harder thing is to, try to vote on a gosh darn fullback when only one team lists one on their depth chart.
And that's who?
That is Schultz at Oklahoma State. So
okay.
If you want a spoiler on who my all Big 12 preseason conference team fullback is, it's that guy. Yeah. The only one who is listed at that position in the entire conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very competitive group. I don't think much has really changed since, these started rolling out originally. K-State and Utah remain the favorites. They do not play in the regular season, so if they were to meet in the title game, no rematch there, which I think would be a hell of a game for the first year of this new Big 12. I think, having one of the newer schools and then having an original mainstay school competing, especially with what they're both kind of made out of, that game seems to me like it would have the word slobber knocker written all over it, but they've got some flair as well. I mean, Avery Johnson's he's got some silky smoothness to him, and Utah's got a lot of great players that we'll get to learn more about as we see a lot more of them just in terms of paying a little bit probably closer attention because they're playing Big 12 teams on a weekly basis as opposed to catching them on a late kickoff after a long Saturday, things like that. So I'm excited to see just how much noise Utah can make. I know they made some of their fans a lot of noise online, and people just kind of had fun with that back and forth of, Utah rolling in and certain segments feeling like they're just going to run the league, and then others already sick of them and feeling like they've replaced Texas as the obnoxious fans in the league. I think that you're generalizing over a very small segment of probably like a couple of people who are actually feeling that way. But it's at least already created a little bit of friction and a little bit of like people already like rooting against Utah and wanting to see people beat Utah. And, Utah wants to come and be like, well, screw you guys. We're going to show you how real football is played. And so I think they've already carved out a little niche for themselves where they've generated some excitement and just some interest. And K-State obviously has been sort of preseason crowned in some ways. But I think there's room for a lot of teams to feel a little bit disrespected. Oklahoma State for one, Iowa State for another. There's an interesting thing here where nobody's expected to win 10 or more games. I think in the SEC yesterday we had, 2 or 3 teams who all had 10 wins or more listed as like Texas did, Georgia did. I think maybe one other team did. Nobody, although Utah and K-State are right there on that precipice. But, yeah, beyond that, I mean, it's a whole lot of, do they make a bowl game or not? I mean, it's really a logjam of teams that are not separated by much. And I think Vegas has got it about right because I think there's plenty of questions. But I do think if you're at Oklahoma State or an Iowa State, you can feel like you're maybe a little bit better than you're given credit for. I think Tech is in a nice little sweet spot right now where they're kind of just lying in the weeds, whereas last year they were kind of loud and hype and, coming off of that first year with Joey and making a bowl game, winning a bowl game. I felt like there was a lot of noise surrounding them. And then they didn't have the best year, although they still closed strong with the bowl win. But I think they're kind of just, we're going to walk the walk as opposed to talk the talk. So I think Tech could be interesting from that standpoint. And then West Virginia might feel a little bit disrespected too. I mean, 6.5 only coming off the year they came off of. So
the quarterback and many others.
Yeah, I think there's 2 teams that it's very clear to say, I think there's not really an argument of K-State and Utah shouldn't be the favorites, but I do think there's an argument about 4 or 5 others could say, well, we deserve to be right there in that conversation or right there on the outside of that conversation.
Well, I agree, and Paul will have his at 4 o'clock, and then I'll do again mine on Wednesday. Craig will show yours on Thursday.
Yeah, and look, I think that I go down this list and I'll hit the over on most of them, and part of that is, and we hit the over on most of the teams yesterday in the SEC. The leagues are so big now.
Yeah.
The leagues are so big that there's fewer intersections of, you have, like in the SEC, you have disaster schedules like Florida has, that are really, really tough. But in the Big 12, I think because no one really knows, there's not a disaster schedule.
Well, we don't know.
But we don't know. But there's not
until the dust settles.
But we don't know that there's not a team in the Big 12 right now that can look at their schedule the same way that Gators can and go
holy crap.
What do we do to deserve this? And I'll just say be Gators. But they. But in the Big 12, there's just not that kind of crisis intersection that you would have where you can play Bama and Georgia and Texas and Oklahoma all in a row, where that doesn't happen that much. But in the Big 12, there's more spacing. There's going to be probably some closer games. It's going to be one of the more evenly matched leagues in the country. So because of that, you could hit overs on a lot of these, and you could see some good records, like a bunch of teams with 7-5s and 8-4s or better, because they're not all going to play each other like they would in the past.
Let's be honest. There are no alpha names that we would look at times, no matter who they have been lately, and they jump out at you. There will be, perhaps you hope, within the next couple of years, somebody jumps out, 1 or 2 or 3 programs, but there's none of those names that when you look at that schedule, it's just because of who they have been, the tradition, and the fact that a lot of times they're good every year.
I think, you look at K-State and you expect them to be good, but I don't think anybody's going well, they're unbeatable.
No.
Same thing with Utah. You expect them to be, they're going to be that buzzsaw that they are, but I don't think anybody's, shaking in their boots of, oh, God, how are we going to beat Utah? It's yeah, I think we could beat Utah if we play well and whatnot. A bad Baylor team nearly knocked them off in Waco last year, and I know that was early in the season. Utah had injuries. I get it. I get that they were not at full strength, but just saying, you can't guarantee full health all year either. So, there's just a lot of unknowns, I think, but there's not any surefire thing right there at the top. Although if there was, Utah and K-State seem like the most fitting teams to fit that bill. But yeah, there's not necessarily a national title contender, and I think that's the worrisome thing for the Big 12 sort of moving forward is, you're going to have teams avoid each other because it's a bigger league, but so is everybody else because they're all playing in bigger leagues too. The thing with the Big 12 is if you have a team that loses 2 games, that might be automatic elimination depending on what happens elsewhere in the country, whereas in other leagues, 2 of them, one in particular, you lose 2 games, and depending on who you lost to, you're still perfectly fine. It's we've lost twice in 7 weeks, but we lost to Bama and we lost to Oklahoma. So, you lost to Kansas and Texas Tech. You're out of here. But we've got at least one more buffer game. And so I think the margin for error for Big 12 teams in this new playoff, even though it's expanded, we're already seeing, if you look at the Andy Staples thing, I brought this up earlier, count how many Big 12 teams, and not that he's the end-all, be-all by any means, respectfully, everybody's got their preseason predictions, but if we know how the narrative's already been massaged this offseason from Greg Sankey and others. Well, you look at his playoff prediction, there's 1 Big 12 team, there's 5 SEC teams, there's 3 Big 10 teams. So that's 8 of the 12 from those 2. And I know that's all kind of what we expect anyways, but think about that. 5 teams from one league, one versus the other. You can already see how that's being set up, and I feel like if you're the Big 12, your margin for error is going to be so small.
If you're not the champion.
If you're not the champion,
right.
Yeah. But, I think the champion, that's automatic, but beyond that, there's no guarantee that you're getting a second team in every year.
I think they're going to need an 11-2,
at worst.
At worst.
You're not going to have a 3-loss team.
Yeah,
from
you
the Big
can't
12.
have
No, you're talking about in the playoff. One team's getting in.
One team's getting, but
you're talking about the secondary team. Okay,
so maybe because 10-3.
But the second loss comes in the championship game in a hard-fought game against the 12-0 team.
You're gonna need probably 2 teams who haven't played each other to be in there at an undefeated team and a 1-loss team, and maybe the undefeated team would be better for them in the playoff, loses to the 1-loss team, and then that way you have 2 one-loss teams in there. That's the ideal thing, and those things are more mathematically likely to happen with the fact that you don't have schedules that are the same. I mean, before in the Big 12 when everybody played everybody, there was no way that was really going to happen because somebody was going to lose twice. You weren't going to have 2 teams that were that close to each other most of the time. But now, because again, the schedule is just so like broad through 16 teams, it could happen. But again, if the Big 12 championship game is a team that's 10-2 versus a team that is 9-3, that's bad news for the Big 12.
That's why expanding to 12 teams, the word I think or the phrase was you got a chance. When you wake up and start working out in August, somebody's got a chance. Now, if it was 4 teams, then you would have to run the table. And even then they would find a way, Florida State, that may not happen. So expanding the playoff to 12, which I like, all that did was allow the 2 dudes, the alphas, to have 3/4 of the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that if they earn it, they earn it. And in some cases, sometimes maybe there'll be a team or 2 that gets in just because.
Well, and the way to stop that is to go and beat those teams.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the only thing you can do. I said this in an earlier show of like, all this talk about all these extracurricular topics, whether it's the NIL gap or it's the revenue gap or it's expansion or whatever the topic is of all the various topics that are out there. The answer for the Big 12 to be, since we're talking about them specifically, to be the best conference they can be is not to have 25 teams. It's not to just keep adding and getting that little adrenaline rush of expansion or, going and playing in Ireland or whatever. They got to win football games that matter, and that's really all that matters. I mean, that's the only way you correct the way you're viewed by TV networks. That's the only way you're viewed differently by pollsters. That's the only way you're viewed differently when it comes to the playoff, is to go out and prove it on the field. And I think there's a lot of unknown that they are not going to get the benefit of the doubt for. And the teams that would get the benefit of the doubt are no longer in this league. Mm-hmm. So even if you're K-State, who's had a great history, or Utah or whatever, you're not going to get that same bump as others who might have similar records in other leagues get. You're going to have to outright win the league, and if you don't, you're going to have a pretty damn impressive run, and that's just to be able to get a couple of teams in.
And the Big 12 will need to win a playoff game or 2.
Right.
That sure wouldn't hurt.
Win games. That's all you can do.
It would be helpful. Now, the SEC today released the rest of their times. Obviously, there's 16 teams. We're not going to show all the schedules. Some of you have already brought up some of the things you liked. I saw an Oklahoma fan saying that he likes the fact that only 2 games will kick at 11 or 12. One of the things about that, the Fox Big Noon kickoff was that was the best game of the week, and so Oklahoma was going to be in that game quite a bit, but I know that became a negative as well. Now, here is one weekend.
It's just really hard to slam 3-2 beer that long.
I don't even think that exists anymore.
Do they get rid of 3-2?
I haven't had it in a long time, but I think that went away. I don't know that Oklahoma folks. Can you correct? Hey, Emory, they still have the diluted beer in Oklahoma?
They have 3-2?
Oh, yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
I'll tell you, when Florida State played there a few years back, my friends from college and I thought we were champions. Yeah. We were like,
put down a 30 crack all by myself.
I completely forgot about the Cross-Canadian Ragweed song.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there like, I've had 7 beers, and I could drive a forklift right now.
Yeah. I think that went away a while ago.
Yeah. All right, here's one weekend. This is the opening weekend. You have ABC's going to have one hell of an opening act of college football. August the 31st, you have Clemson and Georgia. You have Miami and Florida, Notre Dame and Texas A&M, and then also on Sunday, the following day, which is always a day before the NFL or 2 weekends before, USC and USC and LSU in Baton Rouge, or in Vegas, excuse me. So that there is what we hope to see more of in college football. Maybe we will, but that's one good way to kind of lather up for the season.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And again, the SEC did this because they knew they knew how to speak TV. They knew how to speak to ESPN and ABC and Disney and say, hey, if we put this together, then more often than not, you're gonna have some games. Look, part of the thing about the schedule, if you and I'll put the link out that Brett McMurphy sent in the chat, but if you look at the SEC schedule, they're so planned out. They know kickoff times for most of the league already.
Right.
And then they have I say about half of the games, and the other half are flex, meaning that they know that this is either going to be a 3:30 game Eastern or a 7:30 game Eastern. The Georgia will not play at 11 o'clock all year long.
You've already looked at that.
Yeah,
okay.
they've already done that. Graham Coffey tweeted that out earlier today. Georgia will not play, so they have times already, like maybe 4 or 5, and then the rest of their 7 or 8 games that are not are all flex, and it means that they either going to be the 3:30 game on ABC or ESPN or the night game on ABC or ESPN.
Yeah, that's what you earn when you get to be the dude, or one of the dudes.
Well, they're just very smart about television, and yeah, obviously have some big draws, but that's a good opening weekend. I mean, that's a fun opening weekend, and that's I think the idea of that's going to become more commonplace. The consolidation of conferences is having a lineup like that, like what more weekends than not just a special. It's the opening week, so we've got all these big games, but ideally every weekend is going to have bigger and bigger games because you're putting more big name teams in the same league and having them play each other on a more regular basis. So yeah, all of a sudden USC Michigan's a conference game that you're going to get later in the year as opposed to maybe in week 1 or 2 or whatever games along those lines. But I am curious about the future of non-conference games and like just sort of what those look like, because who's to say Clemson Georgia's not a conference game here in about the next 3 or 4 years or something. But I like taking on all challengers. I like scheduling big games in the non-conference. And I think with those other two, you can kind of do what you want if you go and play at Georgia or play Notre Dame. So, yeah, I'm all for these types of matchups early on in the year, and that's a sexy-looking opening weekend right there. I mean, that's a lot of fun, and then capping it off with USC LSU on a Sunday will be great. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's just a golly, and those are the games that even if you have a favorite team and a team that's good or not, that's the day you hope you get to sit at home if you're not at a game yourself and just veg out on all of that. Not to mention there's probably 3 to 5 of the games that weekend that are really, really good too. All right, we have made comments about the Rose Bowl and how stubborn they were and how it eventually kind of pushed them aside a little bit, that they were not going to get off that, January 1st and the parade or whatever. This is a little bit more emotional when you bring up Army-Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Army-Navy not being a standalone game is a disgraceful act by the people who control the bowl games and the NCAA. Pageantry, tradition, meaning of the game deserves the reverence of being the only game played on the second Saturday in December. Unfortunately, with what we now have, that's not possible. They still, I think, have a little bit of a buffer before and after their game, but they're no longer the game on that Saturday. Should they have protected that even more?
I wish they could have, and I think that there's probably a way that you could do it, although it's going to involve something that will become more here's what's going to happen. Ohio State and Michigan are going to play in a Big Ten championship game the week after they play each other, and they're going to split those games. And they're both going to be in the playoff. And then we're all going to start saying, why do we play this game anyway? If both the teams are likely going to make it to the playoff. And look, it might not even be Ohio State and Michigan. It might be Ohio State and USC. But they could have already played, like all those things. If Ohio State, USC, Michigan, and the top 4 teams that could have wound up in that thing are going to wind up in a 12 or then probably eventually 16-team playoff, then you're going to wind up seeing the elimination of that. If you eliminate the conference championship games, you might be able to have a bye before the playoffs start. And then put Army-Navy alone on that day, which I know moves it up a week, but I think that they probably wouldn't mind that if they got a day back.
Well, Mike Bean saying it could be for who gets home field advantage or a bye, as you just mentioned, based on the championship game being played in whatever conference it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I get the traditionalist viewpoint here, but I don't know. I think it's just part of the deal. There's only so many weekends to have games, and with everything expanding, like, what are you going to do? You're going to have people play midweek? I don't know what the alternative to this was, so I can understand, the desire to keep it the same way, but, like, does it really ruin the pageantry just because a game came on before that? or that because a game comes on after that, does that really take away from the atmosphere at the stadium?
It won't for me, although it was nice to know that at 2 o'clock, whatever time it was, that was going to be the game.
It's also nice to know that, like, it's not the only game that day, and, like, hey, that's cool. We got, like, a bowl game. Then we get Army-Navy, which is, like, the main game of the day, and then we get another game after that. Like, I don't know. I'm all for, like, watching more college football, and it kind of sucks when it's Army-Navy, and that's all you get. It's like, oh, well, I want more college football. So I get the more traditional view of this, like the Rose Bowl, like a lot of other things that are changing now. But obviously not a lot is sacred at this point, and TV's running the show. And so here's another sign of that. But because of the timing of everything, like, yeah, you're limited on what you can do here. And I don't feel like it's not so special of a game that it's impacted really by a bowl game before and after it occurring. I don't think it was special because it was the only game that day. I think it was special because of the cadets and because of the stadium and because of the, chance and just everything that went with that. That's why, to me, it's the history. That's why it's special, not because it was the only TV game in town. So
there are other games on other days that have great names, great traditions, great rivalries that play, and there might be 50 other games going on. Army-Navy, of course, has always had a chance to kind of be on its own, but things are changing, and the more we get used to it, doesn't mean you have to like it, but it will no longer be its only game or the only game on that day. When we come back, Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, wrote a story about a young man from East Carolina, I think a defensive back, that entered the portal, had all sorts of offers, talked about how almost like draining it was, eventually stayed at East Carolina, and other stories that he does, including the most impactful freshman coming into college football, and he listed like 100 of them. You're like, 100? Yeah, he did. We're not going to go over all of them. Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, is next. And this is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas. I have been going to Steve Childress since COVID, 2020. And I have I've told the story about how much he has helped me. I'll give you an example. For some reason, one of the habits, I used to tell you, I had habits of like having lozenges all the time. One of the habits when I get on a flight is I would always have like a pack of lozenges. I don't even know why. And I went to go buy one at the counter on the way back from Tampa, put it back down. Because I know all that was going to do is create something, even if not immediately, with just a bunch of sugar in my mouth. Why? And so I put it back down. And that's one of the reasons, because I don't want to have yet another tooth pulled or another root canal, whatever it might be. My dental work still has some work to be done, but it's in so much better shape now. Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan approach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, college football writer. Also follows the transfer portal and does a great job with the sport itself. Chris Hummer joins Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke, 365 Sports. Chris, thank you very, very much for being a part of the show. So you kind of caught my attention with East Carolina cornerback Siobhan Ravel. He got a $350,000 or more offer to enter the portal, which to me immediately, Chris, and we know this is happening, means that somebody contacted him before he was actually supposed to be contacted, correct?
Yeah, I do tell a lot about the story, kind of what it's like behind the scenes when tampering occurs and kind of what that looks like, and kind of the pressure that family was under. So yeah, absolutely. A lot of schools reaching out ahead of time.
So what ultimately brought him back to East Carolina?
The word he used most was loyalty. And I know that kind of may ring hollow for some people in this era of college football. And I mean, I really don't think many people would have turned down the money he did. And shoot, I probably wouldn't have either. But he's the type of player who I think is trying to look at it from a bigger picture. For one, like the East Carolina staff was the first one to offer him out of JUCO. His GPA wasn't very good in high school. Really wasn't very good in JUCO when he first got there. And they believed in him early and worked with him and helped him get to East Carolina in the first place. And now they were also the school that developed him. Their cornerbacks coach, Jules Monetar, who arrived there last year, really helped unlock him. This was really the first time in 2023 he played college football. He played very sparingly in 2022, and I think he saw the development he had under that coaching staff, and he wanted to stick around.
Chris, I think we'd all love to be pursued by people wanting to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at us, but it can also be a little bit of a pain as well. Just how much of a pain do you get the sense from Ravel or others that you've talked to of this process? Like, sure, there's the benefit, the gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, but how stressful are we talking in some cases for some of these players?
Yeah, it's got to be exhausting. Not just exhausting, but like I feel like a decade ago, like in college football, you showed up on campus and your next 5 years were laid out ahead of you. You knew what you had to do. Like you beat out the person in front of you, play as much as you can, you go to the NFL. Now these players have a lot more options, but I think it comes with added pressure and added stressors. Like it's really hard, I would imagine. I mean, I would know nothing about it, but I'm sure it's really hard at 21 or 22 or even 19 to have hundreds of thousands of dollars thrown in your face, not only not by one school in a lot of cases, but by multiple, and going through that decision-making process and having outside actors put pressure on you, and in some cases even having your family put pressure on you because that's life-changing money. So it's got to be a lot.
And then on top of that, Chris, you're not just talking about once in January when the portal opened up, but yet again in April, correct? That they had to go through it, the family, the player, who, of course, that was good news for him that he was wanted like that, but then he's Carolina's staff. So even if you dodged the bullet after the season, you still had that April bullet, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's funny. His family actually pulled Siobhan and his family actually pulled an April Fool's prank on ECU coaching staff, telling them they're entering the portal. And they weren't going to at that time, obviously, but the portal didn't open until April 16th. And the 16th to the 30th is a lot of time. There's a lot of schools come calling. You have to basically battle that every single day if you're the ECU coaching staff. And that's what they had to do. They battled to keep him. They had to re-recruit him every day. They had to make things seem as normal as possible. So, yeah, it's a very nerve-wracking 14 days for that coaching staff.
Chris, there's not been anybody to, like, majorly call out anyone yet because it's a dangerous thing. You could be a coach on a G5 roster that and says, like, listen, we don't tamper, we don't do this. But if you got one coach that tampered and you didn't know about it, then you're going to be caught in a hypocrisy. There's really nothing that I can't imagine anything they'll come up with that will, outside of collective bargaining and contracts, rein any kind of interference in.
Yeah, absolutely not. I think nothing short of buyout clauses, or I guess something similar to like European football that you would see where essentially there's a transfer fee for these players would really, and I mean, that probably wouldn't stop it, but it would at least give some of the smaller schools a win in these cases. So yeah, until we have full-fledged contracts and until there's some form of, I would imagine, some form of representation for these athletes in terms of a union, like it's going to be very hard to stop any of this stuff. It's just, I mean, like, this is college football, y'all. Like, the fabric of the sport is cheating. Cheating has long been, cheating's long been part of the sport, and it's a very competitive marketplace, and teams do anything they can do to get ahead.
Yeah, Chris, I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes I have to remind myself and sometimes remind everybody of, like, what are we really getting our panties in a bunch over somebody maybe cheating in college football? Like, what are we talking about? It's like it's ingrained in the fabric of the sport, to your point. But so is getting excited about lists and freshmen and things like that. So you put together a pretty thorough list of Impact True Freshmen, 100 players. Man, where did you start, and how long did this take you, and kind of where did it take you putting this list together?
Well, it takes too long, I'll tell you that. But I'm happy with the product, and yeah, it's just talking to a ton of people in college football. I usually go by team in the Power Four and try to get at least one guy on there from every school. In some cases, it's not possible because not all schools are really in position to play freshmen. And especially at this point in the summer, like, this list is, like, I think it's interesting, but it's not going to be a true reflection of, like, who's going to play 100%, because you don't know who's going to get injured. You also don't know who's going to come in during the summer and in fall camp and really exceed expectations. But we hope this list is a snapshot of kind of the freshmen who matter ahead of the 2024 season. And I think we got 100 guys on there that are going to play, and I think some of them, like a Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State or a Cam Coleman at Auburn, like, are going to do more than play. I think they're going to be legitimate stars from day one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Jeremiah Smith, and there are hyped wide receivers, and then there's Jeremiah Smith, because from all reports out of Ohio State spring, he was one of the two best receivers on the roster already. And he's just a different kind of animal. Would you say he falls maybe in that Adrian Peterson category of someone who's just so advanced in spite of being so young?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mean, I work for a company that does rankings, and I know not everybody believes like rankings are everything, but like Jeremiah Smith is the number one receiver all time in 24/7 Sports' high school rankings. So you're talking about, I guess now almost 14 years of rankings. He's the number one. And there just aren't a lot of receivers like him. I saw him live at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, and he made some high school cornerbacks look like high school cornerbacks that are playing in the All-American Bowl. So like some of the best high school cornerbacks in America look like they were ninth graders or eighth graders. Like it's just a different kind of dude. He's 6'3", 215. He's got great long speed. He's like a sub, he doesn't really run the 100, but like I think talking to people, he would be a sub 11 second guy. He high points the football as well as anybody. He wins a ton of 50-50 balls. He's an advanced route runner. Like there's very little Jeremiah Smith can't do. Frankly, there was a bit of a bidding war for him at the last second, even in high school, between Miami and Ohio State, because he's that special. And yeah, I mean, you just mentioned he's the second best, one of the two best receivers on Ohio State's roster. That's a roster that's produced, I think, like 5 or 6 first-round picks at receivers the last couple of years. Their top returning receiver is Emeka Ibuka, who's probably a top 5 receiver in college football, and Jeremiah Smith was right there with him during spring ball. So I really do think he is going to be a household name sooner rather than later. It won't just be folks who follow recruiting by the end of this year who know his name. I think he'll be one of the top receivers in the country.
Do you feel the same about Cam Coleman? I feel like I've heard a ton about him and just his size and how impressive he is. Have you kind of gotten the same, I guess, response? He's on your list as well and very highly rated, but as far as coming in and making an impact right away, is that what you expect down in Auburn?
Yeah, people over there rave about him, just unfiltered raving about him. And you usually see a little bit of caution with talking about first-year guys. It's always a lot of qualifiers, like if this goes right, like he has a chance. Like there was none of that with him. Everybody, I think, in that building expects him to come in and make an impact. I mean, Hugh Freeze has said it publicly. I think he said Cam Coleman changes us on offense. Like you don't say that about 18-year-olds unless they really do. And like he's that type of guy. This wide receiver class nationally, frankly, is one of the best we've seen in a very long time. Like a guy like Micah Hudson in this state in Texas is going to have a huge year for Texas Tech. The people over there can't stop raving about him. And I think there's quite a few receivers this year from this class that are going to have a really big impact on this season. The wide receiver, I mean, just because of the way college football is now, like wide receivers are have a more prominent role, and they're more ready to play than they've ever been before. And I think we'll see that this year.
I was looking at not only the names, but the programs who have multiple players that could be top 100 freshmen. And I think Alabama right off the top had 4. And there's a handful that have 3, 2, and of course a bunch who have 1. Is that a compliment for what DeBoer was able to keep and add to have, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4, and I don't know if anyone else has 4 impact freshmen, at least on this list?
Well, I will say, just like a quick clarification on this list, it's not really the top 100 freshmen. It's the 100 freshmen that we think have the best chance of making an impact in 2024.
Okay.
So in some cases, like players might be, there are better freshmen in some cases than the 100 on this list, but it's about path to the field, playing time,
right,
general readiness in terms of size. And yeah, it does speak to Kalen DeBoer holding on to his class, because like there are 4 5-stars listed for Alabama here. And one of them, especially Ryan Williams, the receiver, like looked at other schools but ended up staying in the class. But it also speaks to just like what Alabama has holes at. Like these three freshman cornerbacks didn't have a chance to play at Alabama under Nick Saban most of the time, but because of what they lost in the NFL draft and because of what they lost in the transfer portal, like Alabama needs freshman cornerbacks to step up, which is why you see 3 of them on this list. And Xavier Brown, the kid from California, was starting in the spring already because of how thin they were at that position. So in a lot of cases, this is not only a measure of talent, but it's a measure of need. And Alabama has a pretty significant need, especially in the secondary.
Chris Hummer, 247 Sports with us on 365 Sports.
Chris, Dylan Raiola is the quarterback who probably has to make the biggest impact on this list because he is the likely starter at Nebraska. How advanced do you think he is? And do you think that he has, just because they're going to run a lot of power offense there at Nebraska with Matt Rule, are they going to maybe be able to protect him a little bit more?
We'll see. Dylan Raiola is certainly talented, and he is somebody who was a little up and down. That sounds weird to say for like a 5-star quarterback, but he had his up and down moments in high school. He was a lot better as a senior than he was as a junior, which you would expect, but he was a lot worse as a junior than he was as a sophomore. And I mean, part of that is the fact that I think he was changing offenses in some cases and moving, but the early returns on him have been really positive. Anybody watched Nebraska's spring game, I think he went something like 16 for 23. Like, he was really effective that day. And he's going to be that guy. Nebraska tried to take 2 quarterbacks. They went heavily after a former Ohio State starter. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's now at Syracuse. But ultimately decided just to go with Dylan Raiola. And that speaks to what they need him to do. And I think Matt Rule is a good enough coach to protect him a little bit, as you said. But I think, they're recruiting receivers at a really high level there. They want that passing game to be more effective than it was last year. So I think a lot is going to be put on Dylan Raiola's plate. Like, that offense was abhorrent last year in terms of the passing game. They were one of the worst in the country. And I think there's going to be at least somewhat of an expectation of Dylan Raiola to lift that group up. He might not lead the Big Ten in passing or come anywhere close to that, but they certainly need him to be above 2,000 yards, which is something none of their quarterbacks last year even came close to sniffing. So I think he'll have a little bit on his plate.
How quickly we forget 11-1 Kyle McCord.
My bad, Kyle. a lot of quarterback news rolling up there.
Yeah, absolutely. For Clemson, 2 of the 3 guys you list are wide receivers. And while offensive line play has not been for them what it was during their glory days, this is their most glaring need. And Dabo obviously doubles down on this. He lost Bo Collins, who was an okay receiver for them. Obviously, he wasn't, this isn't a guy like Emeka Ibuka or someone like that who has tons of stats in his corner, but he's decided to replace them with true freshmen. Those guys will likely have to play a role, and will they be the furthest ones, like the ones that are, this is Dabo proving, I don't need the portal, I don't care what all the rest of you say?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if you can win in this era without the transfer portal, frankly. I just think it's hamstringing yourself in an unnecessary way. Like, Achilles, I don't mean to take this to Greek mythology, but Achilles literally was born with an Achilles heel. You know what I mean? Clemson is giving itself an Achilles heel in this situation. But the 2 receivers are really interesting because last year, Clemson, I think, ranked 128th nationally in air yards per throw. So they were just ahead of some of the naval academies. And we talked about that in the College Tech transfers, but Cade Klubnik did not throw the ball downfield last year, in large part because Clemson did not have the receivers who could stretch the field. And that's what these 2 guys, Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, can do. They're both outside receivers in the mold of Clemson's receivers of old. I think we all remember DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins and Martavius Bryant and Justin Ross and T. Higgins. Clemson hasn't had that guy since 2021, essentially. And there is the hope that these 2 receivers can be that. So if they can be in year 1, I think that does help Dabo Swinney prove his point that you don't have to dip in the portal to be successful. But at the same time, it's really hard to expect that from 18-year-old freshmen. And Bryant Wesco particularly, he's a Midlothian, Texas kid. I've seen him live, super talented, but a little more raw than some of the other top receivers in this class. So I'll be very curious how ready he is to go come the fall.
Chris, what is it like? And one of the things you do, you write about everything in college football, but what is it like to try to manage or managing the coverage of the transfer portal? Is that an everyday thing? Is it a time where you need to push away for a day or 2, or can you even do that?
It depends on the time of year. November, December, January, February, all portal. March, a little bit off. April, May, definitely all portal. But this time of year, you kind of get to take a step back and do other things and cover other things. But in college football, I mean, in anything, you cover what people care about. And right now, people really care about the transfer portal. It's our crazy, dumb version of free agency in college football.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. No, you're right. All right. I'm not putting you on the spot, but a lot of conferences are coming out with the wins and losses, Vegas, et cetera, rankings. If you looked and glanced at the Big 12, which has got the 16 teams, you've got the new 4, Texas, Oklahoma gone. Is there a conversation in your head that would be Utah, Kansas State, or is somebody else you think that might be a part of that party at the top?
I personally, I think you could – I think Utah is kind of its own point of conversation in the Big 12. If Cameron Rising's healthy, I think they're the favorite. But I really – you just mentioned a couple schools, but I would also throw Texas Tech, Kansas, UCF, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. All of those teams, I think, have a legitimate chance to play in Dallas for the Big 12 championship. I just don't think there's a lot of separation. I think it's a really interesting league. I think it's a very good league. But I don't think there's a team outside of Utah, really, and maybe Kansas State if Avery Johnson is who they hope that he is, that can really say it separates itself from anybody else. And I really think you can go 7 or 8 deep in this league with teams that have a legitimate chance to make it to Dallas. I just don't think there's a lot of separation.
I don't either. All of us agree with you. We could sit there and chew on this all day, and we probably will until we get about midway through the conference. It seems like it's the team that each year, and maybe this is the case elsewhere, there's 3 wins or so that are bang-bang games, like TCU 2 years ago, Baylor in 21, teams that somehow find a way to win those 3 games at the wire because they're not dominant, but they win those games. The next year it might fall differently. So it's great to hear you and kind of say the same thing that we've been talking about. Thanks for your time. Great stuff, Chris. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of the week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean.
Chris Hummer, 247, spitting out a bunch of, mega information on the freshman and the wide receiver class was stunning good. Highly thought of, not just 1 or 2. Obviously, the kid at Ohio State. You mentioned Ryan Williams at Alabama, among others.
Wingo at Texas.
Wingo's really good, depending on which, service you look at. But he might be the 5th to 9th best, and that's how good the class at wide receiver is this year, or was in 2024.
I've got breaking studio news.
Okay. Oh, I feel the air conditioner.
No, well, you feel it because it's scared.
Did somebody
because Brian from Oasis is on his way.
Okay,
and he's gonna give it a reckoning.
Yeah, I welcome back to being in the studio today. You guys have is there another bullet hole? Is it?
Yeah. So yesterday, let me tell you the story, Smokey. Emery, look at Smokey in the eye when I tell the story. So. Yesterday, we hear the lawn guys out there, and Emery says, man, this is going to be absolutely, this is a time when they're going to, hit a rock into the window. And 30 seconds later, a rock flew into the window.
Emery, stop. Don't predict things.
Yeah.
Predicted the air conditioner.
In a matter of 5 minutes.
Yeah, so.
Who pays for that?
Our owners do. It's part of our lease. It's the lease we agreed to.
About the windows being broken, we fixed
the window is not us. I thought you were talking
the
AC.
I get that.
The window is there. I called him and he's like, yeah, it's my guys. And
the feeling I have about the humidity and the heat in here, and people don't care.
Yeah.
But is that and Craig had brought up, hey, is there a box fan or two? I think it's where it is now, where a box fan or two might make it worse.
Yeah, it might. I'll tell you, Brian from Oasis is Wyatt Earp from Tombstone. He's telling the AC, I'm coming, you hear me? And hell's coming with me.
There you go. All right, Brian, can't wait to see you when we come back in the next segment. Earlier today in the open of the show, we had what Vegas thinks as far as the wins and losses over under. Paul Catalina, we were all supposed to turn in our preseason Big 12 rankings. Remember last year I went start to finish and I was the idiot that had West Virginia dead last, and I admit it. I'll tell Neil Brown that when we see him in Las Vegas. Paul has his 1 through 16 ranked. I'll do mine tomorrow. Craig on Thursdays. We'll come back with that and more. Hope you're having a great day. And at some point we get to Rocco's Jell-O Shot Challenge. It's about to start in Omaha, Nebraska, and you tell us who you think is the favorite to drink the most Jell-O shots in Omaha. This is 365 Sports. We love TexasBeefHouse.com, the Duvall family, and everything they represent, their products, and also those who love to grill during the summer. We've discussed that with Samantha Duvall, who joins us, and now Father's Day is just around the corner.
We've got this year a Wagyu New York strip Father's Day bundle, and that will come with a package of our New York strips. There's 2 steaks per package, a package of our jalapeno and cheese patties, a package of our regular hamburger patties, a stick of summer sausage, and our garlic links. And it's all online, TexasBeefHouse.com. This bundle will ship free in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So this is the perfect time to grab it because all of our steaks are only sold in auction. There will only be a limited number of these packages. So get online and order yours for your favorite dad out there. We're growing every day. Our biggest next step that we have is Bid on Beef. It is actually going to open the month of June with a sale up in New York, but this is going to be a website that we're going to do all of our beef auctions on, so it just makes it a lot easier, our own platform.
Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Father's Day, the summer, family reunions, and so much more, plus the ability to bid on beef. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, here we go. This second hour. 365 Sports, Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina on the set. I'm over here in the crippled section and sitting very comfortably, though. It feels pretty good. I'm getting used to it, and that might be dangerous, but getting used to it. So here we go, 365 Sports. Thanks to everybody that is in the chat room today. Here's Sandra Green. Wingo is the best receiver in the 2024 class. She might be right. Retired stockbroker. So 365 Sports is live outdoors from H-Town, talking about the humidity. No question about it.
Soki, I was just in Houston.
Yeah, for the wedding.
Last weekend. The reception was at a brewery, which was like indoors but outdoors. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And it was awful. It was so swampy and terrible. And this compares to that.
Okay, no, and then put a bunch of more people in it. There's only 5 people here in our studio. Let's see, retired stock. Paul will have Texas Tech 15th, just above Baylor on your rankings. Charisse, Kim Coulter, I think Oklahoma beats Missouri and Auburn, part of their schedule. No idea of Paul's order, but Arizona State, Houston, and Baylor should be at the end of his list. So there we are. Okay, let's do this. Let's get to it.
Let me tell you, the most vitriol I have gotten so far on Twitter is from one particular Texas Tech fan who says because of my Aggie bias that I hate Tech and I don't like Joey McGuire and I don't like Lubbock and all that. And I think none of that's true.
Everything he just said is dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an opinion. I get it. Fans are like that. But everything, he has no clue what you...
Well, last week I did talk about when it comes to every team has a rival that they don't appreciate as a rival.
Right.
And A&M's, back when they were in the Big 12, were Baylor and Tech. I thought it was dumb because Tech used to beat them more than they lost to them. But A&M, for some reason, just chose not to see that. They would just be like,
No.
like that was kind of how it was. And Mike Leach was the coach who kind of brought that to the forefront because he made so much fun of the Aggies and beat them most of the time. And so I always thought it was funny and ridiculous. And on the Baylor end of it, A&M didn't consider a Baylor a rival because Baylor never won that game.
No, it went forever until that thriller in overtime, right, with Sean Bell and from Killeen, Texas. Who caught the pass?
Ziegler.
Yeah, that's right. Dominique Ziegler in the end zone. All right, so here we go. Now, Kim Coulter, by the way, Paul, you're right. Leach beat A&M 10 consecutive times. There you go.
Yeah.
Here is Paul Catalina's rankings, 1 through 16, preseason ranking. And again, do not, my God, I'm begging you, do not gamble based on our predictions.
No.
On this.
And this is really hard to do. This is, I want to say, about 5 drafts of this. It's hard enough to do the team where you have to really look at people and transfers, and newcomer of the year is a weird thing. Like, do Colorado and Utah, like, do Pac-12 players count in this? Or
sure they do.
I guess that's why I put.
They're a part of the conference.
Yeah, but
like, if Cam Rising was back and he was healthy, he probably, even with Jalen Daniels among others,
So that was
it's the 2024
So I just was like, but because it's just so different.
No, it's definitely different.
Yeah. So anyway, at number 1 I have Kansas State. I'm a big believer in Avery Johnson. He's an electric playmaker. I'm a big believer in DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards, their running backs. I like that they picked up Dante Cephas. I know he didn't have a great year at Penn State last year, but I also don't think they had a quarterback like Avery Johnson. Their biggest struggle is going to be replacing some really good offensive linemen, but that's not really been a thing for them. It's just kind of, they just, go into the assembly line and get a couple more, and they coach them up so well. Chris Kleiman is an offensive line coach at heart, so I think that helps. If you look at that, one of the things to look at is if you see a team that always has a good one position, like Alabama and defensive backs, well, you know why that is? Because Nick Saban was that's his expertise, So, Dave Aranda always had good defensive backs. That's kind of his expertise. So that's why I have Kansas State at 1. I have Utah at 2, and Kansas at 3, and Oklahoma State at 4. And these top 4, to me, are the closest and most interchangeable of the entire thing, because there is going to be, especially with Kansas and Kansas State, a big game that's going to swing that. If Jalen Daniels is healthy the whole year, then that's probably going to change a lot of things. I have Arizona at 5th because I like their quarterback and I like what they're doing, but I need to see them in the conference to make me think they're a legit contender. Love KJ Jefferson to UCF. That's why I put them at 6. I love what they've got on offense. I think they'll be better on defense. Iowa State, Virginia Tech, and Texas Tech, or West Virginia and Texas Tech. Actually, this 6 to 9 here, I think they're all going to about have the same record. I really do. And so it may be like
all bowl eligible,
all really good. And then this is my probably bowl eligible and maybe even better, but I just need to see it. And it's TCU, Baylor, and Houston, and Colorado. Like, I think they're probably all going to be bowl eligible, but I got to see it. I got to see it to make me buy in on these things. And TCU, the best of those, obviously, but these are very fresh rosters all the way around, and I got to see them together and do it. And then the 3 at the bottom, Arizona State, BYU, Cincinnati, just so many unknowns when it comes to those 3 in particular. I think Arizona State will probably uptick a little bit from last year, but I don't think that they are quite ready to go. But Kenny Dillingham's a really good coach, and he'll probably get a couple of shocker wins out of that. But BYU and Cincinnati, they all kind of fall in that category of I just don't know what they're going to look like at all.
On Avery Johnson, let's go back to who a lot of people have picked at number 1, or at least will be competing for the conference title. He's dynamic. He had monster games. He didn't play a lot, but he took Will Howard's position, who now might be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Are we sure he can throw the ball when he has to?
I'm confident that he will. Me. Craig, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't know that, right?
Fairly confident, yeah, but I don't know that he can go out there week after week and just toss it around if they eliminate the running game from him. But yeah, he seems to have the tools necessary to be able to be a pretty effective passer. But yeah, I think that there is a lot of just assumptions going on with him as well. To your point, like, hey, he looked really good at times last year. let's just go ahead and bump him up a notch and assume that he's going to be like all Big 12 now. Whereas I don't think that's necessarily the case, especially if you're dealing with issues on the line. Having a mobile guy like him is certainly a benefit, but that could also have an effect on the fact that he's having to run around a little bit more than he did last year. So I don't know. I think I think you love the talent that he has, the natural talent, the leadership, things like that. I think it's also you love his head coach and you love the running backs that are around him, and you just assume that the offensive line is going to be good enough and the rest of the team around him is going to be good enough. But, yeah, there are some assumptions going on, I think, with Kansas State to some extent,
right.
But that's all based on the faith that you have in Chris Kleiman to have gone out and replaced the guys that needed replacing and to have improved where they need to improve. So I think, there's still a lot to prove for Avery Johnson, to your point.
And he seemed like, again, the coaches see everything. They know. 14 of 31 was the biggest game he had. In the bowl game against North Carolina State in a win, threw for 178 yards and a couple of scores. But other than that, he never threw more than 10 passes and didn't play a lot. Again, he didn't start many games, so we don't really have the whole picture in front of him. But with Giddens and with Edwards and with Johnson almost in a three-headed running backs room, as you mentioned, Paul, they're fundamentally sound, but they do lose a lot of experience. Beebe, Leviston, among others, on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think their wide receivers need to break out a bit more this year, but that'll go hand in hand with, how well is Avery Johnson able to throw the football. I mean, that's a valid critique or thing to note is that he hasn't had to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and win a game through the air necessarily yet. So that's what happens when you're a true freshman who's thrown into the fire and, having to basically take over the starting job late in the year, or you went out and took the starting job late in the year. So they're not worried enough about him as a passer to have just let,
right.
Will Howard walk out the door. But I do think that there is also a little bit of that surprise element of like the first few teams that play them, like, do you know what you're getting as far as Avery Johnson as a passer goes, and what does that attack look like? But yeah, he's obviously exceptionally gifted, but he has a lot that he has not done yet, and we're all, I think, just again going back to that word assuming, we're just assuming that that's all going to translate the way that, him being able to run for touchdowns did. And that may not be the case, especially with an offensive line in flux. And if that's not the case, then that's more reason to throw gasoline on Utah and have them out in front or any other number of teams. But I think there's just a lot of faith, like I said, in Kleiman and his ability to kind of know what he has and put it all together.
Well, Paul has him 1, Utah number 2. Cam Rising, if you knew he was going to play all the games, would he put him up higher? You don't bump him only one more.
No, if I would pick Utah number 1 if I knew Cam Rising was going to be Cam Rising.
Okay.
And that Cam Rising got hurt in large part because, this wasn't an injury of, he was just kind of randomly out there. Cam Rising gets hurt because Cam puts his nose in everything. He is not afraid to mix things up. He's a tough guy QB, and that knee injury was really bad. And my question is about guys coming back from injuries that bad is, can they be a new version of themselves if they have to be, or is he going to be the same version of himself? And that's the big question I have about them.
Scott Mitchell, by the way, former Utah quarterback, does broadcast with Utah, will join us on Thursday. Be a good question.
And I will ask him that because that's the key. If Cam Rising can be as close as he can be to Cam Rising we saw 2 years ago that led Utah to a conference title and a Rose Bowl and all of that, then Katie bar the door.
Yeah, they lost that Rose Bowl game in a great game with Ohio State. Was that when the Chris Olave had 300 and some? Was it Olave who had a bunch of yards receiving? It was the kid from Lake Travis.
Oh, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, he had the huge game. We were covering the Sugar Bowl when they were wrapping up that game. All right, so let's keep that up there for a second. In the front line 1, who among those 4 are you least positive will end up there?
Oklahoma State. And I don't think they'll be that, they could go down a line to me. I don't know if Alan Bowman's going to be healthy for 2 years in a row. I don't know how good Garrett Rangel really is. I don't know how good all those guys. Mike Gundy will coach his ass off. Like, I'm not worried about that. I just wonder how good they're going to be at that position. And if you look at the 3 teams I have picked above them and the teams I have directly behind them, all of their quarterbacks are guys I would take over Alan Bowman. And as a matter of fact, maybe even to 9, I would take them over Alan Bowman for sure.
Okay. The mixture with Iowa State, West Virginia, Texas Tech, UCF, and all them, man, my God, that is that literally is, you could just, at any of those numbers, that's probably going to be highly debated, the midsection of the conference too. Which of the ones from 9 to 16, in your opinion, have the highest ceiling to rise above what you have them as and be a part of, and might even be a part of a chase into mid to late November?
Tech and TCU. If they're healthy, Tech, the only reason I put them at 9, even that low, and didn't kind of mix it up and maybe switch them with UCF is they've not had a healthy quarterback for 2 straight years. They keep rotating through quarterbacks. So I need to see Joe and McGuire and that offensive line. I need to see them stay healthy, and I need the quarterback to stay healthy for me to fully buy in on Tech. I think they're getting better incrementally, but I do think that constantly having to rotate quarterbacks because of injuries has hurt them over the last couple years. They're better on the road than they were 2 years ago. They were better on the road last year. I expect that trend to continue. But, again, I got to see the offensive line keep those guys upright and not getting hurt for long stretches. And then TCU, they're 5-7 last year. If they, Sonny Dykes kind of gave us a nice little insight into why he felt that, but I need to see them get back on their schedule and do that to make me believe that they're real contenders.
All right, Craig, your thoughts about Arizona at 5?
I'm not as high on Arizona, although I feel like I'm the ringleader of the whole Noah Fafita, Tetero McMillan fan club. As far as like when they first got brought into the Big 12, I was proudly shouting out those guys' names because I'd watched a lot of them, and I was very excited about just being able to watch that duo. But, Arizona's defense was also very, very good, and they had good running back and this and that. But I feel like I haven't been able to really understand outside of like Tetero and McMillan and Noah Fafita and maybe a guy here and there why they're getting so much love when they've had a coaching change and they've had as much of a changeover as they've had, especially defensively. A big part of why they were good was their defense. Their defense now is, basically in Austin, Texas, as far as the coach behind it and some of the defensive linemen. So I don't know. I haven't put my list together yet, but one of the things that I've thought about already is kind of like who's higher than they need to be for me, and I think Arizona might be one of those schools. I think they're going to be good. I just don't know that they're going to roll into the Big 12 and be one of the 4 or 5 best teams like right out of the gates.
Had they stayed intact, though, that'd be easy to say.
Yeah,
yes.
no, if their head coach stayed and their defensive lineman stayed and their defensive coordinator stayed and, all that, they rolled back a team that beat the hell out of Oklahoma in a bowl game and won 10-plus games last year. Yeah, if they all came back 100%, I'd be, right to the front of the line to punch that ticket. But that's not the case. That's not at all the case. They got a lot to come back that you like, but it's not the team that ended last year as strongly as they did. So they might be a little bit high for me, but I don't think they're one of the bottom rung teams either.
From Fight On Natties, the quarterback's last name from Arizona sounds like a wrap you would order at Subway.
Fafita, yeah, you could definitely. I mean, that might be Big 12 Eats when they do the food pita items, the Fafita pita or Fafita fajitas. That right? Well, I need to be in charge of Big 12 Eats at this point with the ideas. Honestly, but. Yeah, the Fafita fajita, I could see that being a nice item out there in Tucson, but it does sound like that. Right. But you'll be hearing a lot of Fafita, I would imagine, this upcoming season.
How about this? The Fafita fajita pita.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
And it's like fajita meat inside of a pita. Yeah, I think we could do that.
Sure, anything that rhymes. Gordita, if we wanted to. Yeah, I think we've gone down a lane though. We found a lane for Noah Fafita Big 12 food items for sure.
Is okay, Paul, of the final thing on your rankings. Which did you ever at any time think of Kim Coulter and you were petrified to put him too low because of the backlash that he was.
Well, draft 1 had them number 1. So just because of that. No, I did.
I think the better question is, how much did he punish Oklahoma State for wet blanket? Would be the more fair
I have
question.
not seen him in that.
No.
Yeah, I have not seen him in here.
No, I haven't seen him.
Okay, no.
I did. No, I did. Like, I knew that when I did it, I thought I was going to get a text from him. I knew I would. But it is, like, again, my reasons are not have anything to do with my confidence in them to get better. I think they're going to be better. My reasoning is just about, can you keep a quarterback in shoulder pads all year long that's the same guy? It's the same reason I don't have Kansas winning this thing. Honestly, because he's a senior and Avery Johnson is essentially, starting his first year, I would take Jalen Daniels to win this league hands down if I knew that he didn't have a chronic back problem. And I'm even maybe ranking them a little higher at 3, thinking he's going to be better. But, like, that's the reason. It's the reason I don't have Utah winning. And then after that, like, it gets a little dicier. If Tech has Baron Morton all year long, they'll probably finish 5th or 6th.
All right, so you have Utah with Rising trying to come back for a second year. KU with Daniels in his back. Oklahoma State with Bowman, who has a history at times of having the injuries.
Who has a history as long as the Bible at this point of his college career. Yeah, I mean, he's been around so long at this stage. So you stick around long enough, you're going to have an injury history of some sort, I think.
Marcus Emmert in the chat. Yes, Greg, exactly. How do you put Iowa State at 7?
I think 4 to 7 are all about the same to me. And Iowa State has not put back-to-back years together in a while of being towards the top. So
wet blanket has entered.
Oh, see?
Yeah, there it is.
It's like Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Paul, how do you have Oklahoma State at 4, but you have them hitting the under at 7.5 wins?
Did I say that? I didn't say that.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I did early on. I said the question on that when we were talking about 7.5 wins was, you asked one of those things of who would you bet to hit the under on this as opposed to the over. And I said Oklahoma State because of Bowman. I don't necessarily think that. I think that they'll be in the 8-9 win category. But again, I don't, do something 2 years in a row and I will believe in you a little bit more. The whole Big 12, as a matter of fact, I can do that for every team in this league right now.
I think that there's an issue with that, though, is that, I understand where you're coming from, but the teams just change so drastically. Yeah. It's like, how do you – you can flip a switch, and the reason you flip it's not because you brought the same team back 2 years in a row. It's because your team's drastically different, whereas, like, there's just not builders anymore. Like, we have the same guys for the last 3 years. Like, those days are almost not even here anymore. I mean, maybe for some select schools they are, but it is – like, I used to do that, too, of like, well, they won 9 games last year. Like, they bring everybody back. Like that sometimes can lead you down a road, returning production and things like that. But I don't think that's as much of a guarantee of, like, you were bad last year, you're good last year. That translates to this year as much as it used to. It does. It can still, but I don't think it's as much as it used to.
One of the things in college football, to me, is it's almost like you could see a team building over a year or two. Now you could jump from one thing to the next, and it's hard. And it's hard, by the way, it's hard to do these rankings. Did you at any time think about a fan base, not just Kim Coulter, because he's like bigger than a fan base, or anybody else like Wet Blanket, who, again, Wet Blanket joined the chat. Did you at any time think about the rankings and go, oh, that fan base is going to be on my you-know-what?
Yeah, no, I knew. I mean, I did it because they asked to do it. This is really, really hard to do.
There's too many teams, man, and we're trying to add more teams. Like, what are we doing?
It was hard enough when there were 10 teams. It was harder when there were 12, and then
14,
and then 14,
right.
and then and then now there's 16 teams. It's just
all right.
It's really hard to do, and also, I don't know if I would get caught up. Like, I would more get caught up in the tiers than the actual place, because there's 16 teams. The schedules are so different across the board that, like, the difference between 2 and 6 may be a game for all of them.
Oh, I think the difference No, I agree.
If I'm telling you that Utah is going to be second, I might be telling you that Utah could be 10-2 or 9-3, and UCF could be 8-4, all those other teams could be 8-4.
Would either one of you be like? I'm not talking surprised, but either one of you be completely surprised if either K-State or Utah, one of the two, don't play for the Big 12 title? I wouldn't either.
I would not be I would only be shocked if these rankings happened in reverse. That's it. Yeah. That's the only thing that would shock me. But if you want to take 1 through 10 and say there's going to be a massive shuffle there, then yeah, I would believe that. I think Baylor and Houston will be bowl eligible. I think Colorado will be bowl eligible. I just don't think those teams are really going to contend for the conference.
13 teams are bowl eligible?
Yeah, I mean, considering that.
I don't know if that's mathematically possible, but I understand what you're saying.
I mean, it's got to get to 6 wins, and everybody's got 2 games on their schedule. They're automatically going to win. So then you're only trying to find four games. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, and look, when you think about 13 teams bowl eligible, I mean, that's only like a fifth of the teams you need to finish out bowls.
That means everybody better win all of their conference games, non-conference games.
But I mean, I think they all have potential to be bowl eligible. That's to say, and there's probably somebody up there in the list that I say is going to be really good that's not going to be bowl eligible because tragedy has befallen them.
Here's one of the things I'll say, and you saw my numbers, and I don't think ours differ very much based on what we'll release tomorrow. And we'll do that tomorrow at some particular time.
Yeah,
it's a crazy league, man. It's you don't look at any of those names, any of those logos, and go, wait, how do they have? Which you did, and you had Oklahoma run the conference for a long, long time. Then Texas, of course, had a lot of disappointment over 8 to 10 years until finally they got on track and had the great run that they had last year. And even then, Kansas State was right on the doorstep in that game in Austin, which was a great comeback. But they didn't finish it off. And even then, Texas still might have won the Big 12 title with whoever they played if they got to that point in the championship game. All right, Craig, you have something else to add? All right, when we come back, the World Series, the College Baseball World Series is tomorrow. Craig's off the radar around the corner. But we need to have fun with this next topic. In Omaha, they started this, I don't know when, Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. Who are the favorites to win among the 8 teams there? 4 ACC and 4 SEC teams. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer still in pipe. 1943, they opened up their doors, and now, since December of 2022, they have the massive facility that's still all the efficiency that you've ever wanted, even better. All the product you want, even more. And still the old-fashioned handshake. Oh, I know. There are contracts that are signed, too. There's negotiation as well. But they are there for you. And truly, since 1943, they have done pretty much, they stayed in business when even bigger stores and brands came into Waco that normally can suck the life out of a locally owned business. They never flinched. They never changed. They stayed true to their values of commitment and a handshake. And on top of that, not just once when they walk in the door, you walk in the door, generations of families did that in businesses too. Pioneer still in pipe, just on the east side of I-35 on Loop 340 and Highway 6, pioneerboys.com.
Make this the summer of Jeep at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2024 Jeep Compass under $30,000 or save $13,000 on a Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist's office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
When your business depends on technology to stay on track, you need professional IT services you can trust. Carry On Solutions offers managed IT services, network professional consulting services, and cybersecurity. Carry On Solutions expert team handles M365 and Azure migrations, Active Directory assessments, security assessments and hardening, Exchange migrations, Windows Server upgrades, Veeam backup and recovery solutions, and more. In a world where technology is constantly evolving and security is an ever-ending concern, Carry On Solutions will keep your business running by minimizing risk, downtime, and giving you peace of mind. For more information, email sales@carryonsolutions.com or contact carryonsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
College Baseball World Series this weekend, and then for, of course, the rest of the next week in Omaha. And there's this, I don't even know who wins it because Tennessee's really good. A&M exploded to take the lead in a game that looked like they're going to lose on Sunday night among the other teams. Kentucky was ranked, I think, one at one point. Florida State ran right through their regional and super regional. Virginia, they're all good. So Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. These are the 8 teams in the College Baseball World Series. I'm going to go over the 2023 rankings in a minute, the final standings. Who is the favorite among the fan bases, alums, boosters, whoever, to win this year?
Give me the SEC, and then whittling it down, I'd say freaking A. Not A&M. I don't know how to, split hairs, though, between Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. I don't know the people well enough, if that makes sense, too. It's like LSU, drunken blindness, blackouts, that's, part of their DNA. I don't know the others as well, how they are identified.
Here's how I feel this goes. I think you've got Virginia and North Carolina that will be squarely in the middle. And or maybe bring it up the rear. A&M, I can say this confidently, the 3 places I have been the most tailgating in my life are all on this list. Florida State, Texas A&M, and the University of Florida.
Okay.
And I can say without a doubt, and this is not a knock on Texas A&M, but the 2 schools in Florida have chance that they don't have to really remember. And, and A&M has a whole songbook, essentially, that they've got to remember. So there's a reason for that, is that A&M, they keep it together better than those 2 schools.
They don't strike me as, out-of-control party people. They're very, they party, they'll drink it up, but it's not like
they have an
abusive,
They're
incredibly
disciplined.
Loyal, passionate fan base.
The passionate, focus, discipline and focus. I think that this is legitimately a 4-team race. And those 4 teams are Tennessee, Florida, Florida State, and NC State. NC State will be, much like they were in the NCAA tournament, a Cinderella, a dark horse. Someone that you don't think much about because you don't know much about them. But believe you me, of all those schools in North Carolina, Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest, and NC State. Them boys party. They know how to go. And I can confidently say that the entirety of my college career, that Florida State, Florida, and Tennessee were always in the top 10 of Playboy's party schools because it's an article I read every year.
Okay.
I also got that magazine for those articles as
yes.
well.
So I am very confident that it will come down to those 4 schools, and obviously whoever is in the longest will probably get the most. And I don't know if there's like an LSU type benefactor from beyond Omaha.
That's what I mean.
That's going to, tip the scales in anyone's favor. But I do know that all 3 of these places, or 3 of the 4 of them, I'm not sure about NC State and their, NIL and collective outreach. But I do know that Florida State, Florida, and Tennessee are spending a lot of money in those things. So I would assume you get a couple of those guys who are paying these baseball players in there into Rocco's, and they see that one of them is not winning, and somebody's going to buy 20,000 Jello shots.
Last year. All right, you mentioned Tennessee as one of the favorites, and this is interesting. I don't know if it matters how long a team stays in the bracket, if fan bases leave, or some of them just stay there for a week.
Sure does, yeah. You're there longer.
Last year, LSU finished with 68,888 Jello shots. The next best number, Wake Forest at 7,622, nearly 60,000 plus less Jello shots. TCU, how about the Frogs? Very close, 7,000. Tennessee was under 2,300, and then nobody else. Florida had 4,136. Oral Roberts, Stanford. Stanford didn't have hardly any Virginia either. Those are 2 really studious schools. But it was a landslide. But like you said, that's in their DNA. They wake up from being born, and there's an IV in their wrist. I
think there's whiskey in their baby bottle or something along those lines. I still don't really believe those totals either, like 60,000 more. Like, you had a lot of fans there. You didn't have like 20,000 more fans there,
somebody
did you?
Called in, like, basically
right.
LSU had, and I think what they did was they called in and said, the Jello shots are on me.
Right,
and
yeah.
I am, so if you're an LSU fan and you go up and go Tigers, I would like some Jello shots. And they're, how many do you need? Like, we've got 10 of us. And they're like, here's 50. And
I suppose. I mean, I get that's how it would be, but that's also very hard to believe. So, I wonder how they determine that, like, because if there was that many actually down in Omaha, which should be the way that it is, then that's like, I need like a documentary on that, because that's so many more Jello shots than anybody else. You'd have to have 20,000 more people taking 3 shots apiece just to close that gap. So I have no doubts there's like Henry from, Bossier Parish or whatever, have like 12 of them himself, like on 5 days in a row. That's still a lot of damn Jello shots. 60,000.
Raising Cane's founder and alumnus, LSU alumnus Todd Graves, bought 6,000 himself.
Right. The point's not that they were bought.
Yeah, right.
It's that did people actually drink 60,000 more? That's the part I'm having a hard time.
That's a punch.
Because if you do that, I still have no doubts LSU wins, but you're kind of like cheating the system a little bit of like, here's this contest happening, and all of a sudden there's people on the phone like, give me 6,000 Jello shots. Did they drink the Jello shots, or they just bought 6,000 Jello shots? Because is there not a difference?
I think
in the actual competition.
I think there is
versus like what you bought.
So it needs to be in person.
I think so. I think there need to be rules in place, and plus it's also how many can your fans consume and still be standing.
Right.
It's not cold in Omaha in June. It's quite often hot. And I don't know, like, I just know how I am in my 40s, that there was a time where I could go to a party in college and have as many Jello shots as somebody would give me. And I was still awake.
It just depended on the mixture. Like, were you getting strong ones or are you getting weak ones? I mean, you have like 2 of one kind and you're face planting, and you have like 6 of another kind, and you're fine.
I don't think I don't remember myself ever having more than a couple of 3 in one night.
I did.
Yeah, you don't remember it.
I did comedy at a golf tournament last year that one of the other people had like Jell-O shots at the hole, and they brought me 3 of them, and I had to like sit down for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And I did and it was like before I left, I was done, and I was like, well, I had to come here, and I was like, well, I better sit down because like those Jell-O shots were sturdy, and that was 3 over 2 hours or 3 hours of me being there. So I just know that most of the people buying these Jell-O shots are not college students. They are people like me trying to recapture their former glory. So there's no way that most of them can do 10 in a day. And then still go to the game the next day and not hate their life.
Yeah, I would.
It's already tough enough for people like me to stay up to 10:30.
But that's not who you were then.
Oh, no, not who I was then. If you sent me to Omaha when I was 21, 68,000 would have been in our sights. I mean, at least in our heads it would have been.
There's one of the comments about the College Baseball World Series, regional snooze fest boring because 8 teams are in the Southeast, right? Mm-hmm. South and Southeast. That's where a lot of sports, the trends are going, man. The talent, the schools, the campuses, NIL, the excitement.
It's going to get worse in baseball. Are you kidding? Baseball, it's evolved into this. It's only going to get worse. I mean, when you give 2 leagues all that money, you think all that money is going to like new football facilities and everything? No, that's going to, some of it's going to go there, but they're making $40 million more. I mean, how much can you realistically have nicer facilities at a certain point? Like, what are you honestly? So you're spending it on players now. That's where all the money is going to go, is you're spending it on players. But even deeper than that, you can only spend so much on football.
Right.
So where's all that going to go? I guarantee you we're going to talk more about SEC basketball in the next decade than we've ever talked about it in our entire lives. I'd take that bet right now and feel great about it. We're going to talk about like how Alabama's so great and like, Auburn and whoever being so great more in the next 10 years because they're going to have the money to buy the teams. And baseball, it's already regional in some aspects to begin with. Like there's a complete lack of I guess West Coast this year. Is there no West Coast in this mix? So like that normally would be a little bit in there, and maybe that'll still infiltrate from time to time. But is Cal State Fullerton still going to be able to keep up with just like Georgia, who is already good in baseball, but like now has, let's say, $10 million baseball allocated just to spend on their roster? That's what we're walking into now with these money disparities. It's not going to be football. Like you add like another 10,000 seats to your stadium, so now you have 120. Like you don't need to do all that. It's going to be like we're going to have the best of everything in football and buy the best that we can. And then when that's left over, we're going to basketball and baseball and softball and all these other sports. I mean, look at softball now moving forward. You got the behemoths moving into the SEC. They're going to be making more money than ever before. You think Texas and Oklahoma are about to not be dominant in softball for the next however many years? So, yeah, I think baseball is definitely going to be a very interesting sport to eye as far as how regional it becomes because of where all the money sort of allocated. And the fact that a lot of money in the Big Ten, that's just not baseball territory the way that it is all throughout the Gulf Coast.
Who won the Big Ten regular season title?
Garrett,
No, I'm
honestly not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know Indiana was pretty good. Nebraska was pretty good. There was another, but you not that you're going to just rip off who the Big 12 or SEC guy was because there's so many teams you could pick. But you're right, Craig. It's just it's a different animal. Everything is flooded, surging to the southeast.
Yeah, and it's gonna.
And potentially even more so. I mean, look at one of the teams in here. It could be an SEC team here pretty soon in Florida State. Clemson, very good baseball team. Just ran into Florida. Like, they could have both been in this thing. They're both trying to get into one of the leagues that's already pretty much dominating it. And then, again, with the Big Ten, I think you look more towards basketball for them. And then, we can delve into, like, volleyball and all these other sports. But, yeah, I think baseball is in a place where now with scholarship situations changing and the money tipping a certain way, and you already kind of feel that fever that there is in the Southeast just in terms of the crowds and things, that, yeah, that's going to be hard to not have it so regionalized, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, I feel confident in saying this. If Florida State and Clemson did wind up in the Big Ten, they would just trade off the baseball title, kind of like they've done with the football title. Although USC could charge up and probably do very well there. They've got a great baseball history, just not very, very recently. But it's same with UCLA. Both those could charge up and do very well in the Big Ten in baseball.
Incoming team to the Big 12 has
Big
a
10,
great baseball history, but not much, I don't think, of late was Arizona State. Reggie Jackson, I believe, of course, Barry Bonds. There's a lot of great names in history there at ASU, but not so much of late.
The only thing keeping parity was the fact you had scholarship limits. That's all out the window now. And the money situation is all out the window. So that's something to eye for various sports of just how dominated does it become to the point of like, is this even fun anymore to see the same league competing for every single championship in every single sport every single year because they just have such advantages or one or two leagues? Like that's the fear, I know, and I'm not trying to be like dramatic or anything here, but like I was thinking that watching the baseball tournament, I was thinking like, look at all these teams in the same region from the same couple conferences. A couple of them could be in this other one here pretty soon.
Three of them on North Carolina's not.
Yeah, you're right. North Carolina's, and then we'll see what happens with the ACC. But yeah, like that's the kind of thing that you're looking at now is how much does that money tip things? We always focus on football and maybe basketball, but I think it's going to be felt as much in a lot of the other sports because you're going to have so much cash overflow to be able to play around with and go buy whatever swimmer you want to or volleyball player or what have you. And if you're some of these other schools, yeah, you're going to make way less for starters. So you're already behind the eight ball there. We're talking about $50, $60 million gap. You're not going to close that. So you're trying to do what you can to basically smash the pedal in football and be competitive. Just be competitive. Smash the gas in basketball and just be competitive. You're not going to – how much are you going to have left over to then go ensure that your baseball team can also be as competitive when the other – you know what I mean? So we know the scales have tipped, but I think they've tipped a lot more lopsided than we even realized because of the money situation.
Before anyone in the chat room or anyone later on that watches the replay says anything, Craig's an OU fan. Paul's an FSU fan. I'm a Nebraska fan. So we're from Blue Bloods. We're from schools that are big schools in the bigger conferences. FSU's trying to change that to where they are. But it's not. It's about what is still kind of fun to watch rather than it's going to be a 16 or 20 team invitational every year.
I'm not even critiquing. I'm just saying straight facts that it's already lining up. Every single move has been made to benefit like two leagues. Benefit them more than anybody else. Every single move benefits them more. Roster limits, NIL, everything benefits them already.
TV
and so
deals.
now
Yep.
it's just going to be even more of that. And to have I can't imagine somebody have an issue with that. To have an issue with that, like, you just have an issue with factual statements because it's true. Yeah.
No, it's because everybody
it's not
has
it's not a critique. I'm not saying, like, boo them. I'm just saying, like, if you're tired of them winning already, get ready because it's only going to be more of that moving forward because the advantages are only going to grow.
When we come back, Craig Smoke is off the radar. Also today, Sam Kahn from theathletic.com at 5:10. We told him, I asked him, I said, hey, come on and kind of discuss the Big 12 and college football. He will be here with us. And then also Paul's top 5. Oh, and Hall of Famers John McClain. So we're about to go rapid fire for the next hour and 15 minutes. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. Should have the Big Ten will get a boost from like Oregon, for example. Like they'll have a little bit of a boost with the West Coast teams that do get added, but does it tilt the scales back? I'm not so sure about that. But let's talk about Richard Carr. They got hot summer savings right now on GMC and Buick and Cadillac models as the Richard Carr Summer Savings Event is ongoing right now. And maybe you've heard the word on the street. The new Cadillac Lyriq electric vehicle is turning some heads. It's getting some good reviews, and some of the bells and whistles that come along with the Cadillac Lyriq electric vehicle is an incredible acceleration and ride. It's not a common electric vehicle, but it's a vehicle that definitely stands out. And if you're looking to upgrade from having driven an EV every day to a Cadillac Lyriq model, well, you can save big and get thousands and extra savings on your EV trade-in right now over at Richard Carr Cadillac. So a prime time if you're an electric car driver to go and upgrade and get into that new Cadillac Lyriq, but big savings on those models right now as a part of their summer savings event. They also got the 2024 GMC Yukon SLTs for under $62,000. That will put you not only in a quality vehicle with all the bells and whistles and all the newness factor, but also gives you that special peace of mind on the road these summer months. You're traveling with your family, your significant other, your buddies, and going to wherever you may be going. The thing about summer trips is they're great and all, but the main thing is you want to be comfortable. You want to enjoy it. And having driven a clunker of a car at times during the summer months, it can definitely take you out of being all that happy. So have that peace of mind of being in a quality, safe vehicle as you travel the highways and byways this summer. And lots of different options for you, including right now that 2024 GMC Yukon SLT for under $62,000. Also, as I mentioned, if you're more the EV route, check out the Cadillac Lyriq. But a couple of models there for you on the lot, amongst many others. Over 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks also offered right now over at Richard Car. You can see the inventory online and then show up to the dealership and make them an offer. 100% credit approval is always their goal. They say yes when others say no. So check out the folks that have been in business for 20-plus years, 25 years to be exact, in Central Texas. Log on to richardcar.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smokes Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. It's a Tuesday. We do this Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so it's been a little while, but glad to be back and somewhat to normal. I know we're going to have little interruptions here and there, like Paul goes on vacation next week, but for the most part, it's been good to kind of have the first day in a while where we've all been a full show.
Yeah, I think it's been since the 14th of May.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Nearly a month now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
No, I got
you
back.
Got here.
Yeah, you were for one show.
Yeah, I was here for that week after I was able to come out of my cave.
Right.
Yeah, that was late May.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Okay.
So it's been a little while. So I know we got a bunch of guests coming up. I'll keep this as brief as I possibly can while still hitting the highlights. But the big news, the big summer bummer, not blockbuster, but fans of Nathan's hot dog eating competition, and more specifically, fans of Joey Chestnut, who wins it, every year practically. There's some big-time news coming out of Coney Island, I suppose, is where that'd be coming out of, Coney Island. Joey Chestnut is out of this year's July 4th Nathan's hot dog eating competition, and you may be thinking, like, is he just outgrown this? Is he just unable to eat hot dogs anymore? Like, that's the part where I think I'd be at this point, is like, are hot dogs not just disgusting to you at this point with all you've eaten? But, he's a champ 16 times, as a matter of fact. And every year, he's on a streak now since 2016. He's won the thing. So he's on a pretty impressive run, but he will not be a part of it this year. So that streak will come to a close, and he will not win number 17, but not because he's sick of hot dogs and not because he's got major health issues, but because of branding, because of a sponsorship. Impossible Foods is the reason as to why Joey Chestnut is not going to be a part of the Nathan's hot dog eating competition this year, as that conflicts with the sponsorships with Nathan's hot dog eating contest, and therefore, as a result, Joey Chestnut will not be a part of the competition moving forward. So that's like, having name an event and the elite of the elites not able to partake. Are you really the champion if Joey Chestnut's not taking part in this?
These are the Rockets. Whoever wins this weekend or whenever it is will be the Rockets.
Okay. I was like, what? The Bulls. Jordan retired. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, no, and
well, it was not fair, but
look, I don't blame Joey Chestnut for taking money. I'm on Nathan's side. If anybody's mad at Nathan's for standing their ground here, look, Impossible Foods makes plant-based hot dogs.
That's the catch here, is that it's not even real hot dogs who he's leaving the hot dog competition for. So maybe he is sick of hot dogs, but it is a plant-based, it's a vegan-based company. And so he's turning his back on not only Nathan's, but on actual hot dogs, it sounds like.
It's the Live Hot Dog.
Yeah, it's Live Hot Dog.
It's Live Hot. I got to support Nathan's here. And I appreciate you if you're a vegan or whatever, but I can tell you that at no point will an Impossible hot dog taste as good as a Nathan's hot dog.
Let me ask you this. Do we really know what the hell's inside of a hot dog?
We do. We don't want to talk about it, though.
Here's the thing. I don't care. I'm okay with it. I've made my peace.
I don't care, but I don't want you to sit there and tell me about it. I've already just blacked that out.
I'm going to get on DoorDash and have 5 of them sent to our studio.
I'll eat them. You're not going to scare me from eating them, but I don't care to know how they emanated and everything.
I have maybe 4 a year at the most, and it might be at a golf course making the turn from 9. Now I get a hot dog with mustard. I'm fine, but I don't make it a habit. But I used to, when there was a chili cheese dog place in Tyler called Der Wiener Schnitzel, I would make a fool of myself of how many I could eat.
Yeah, I love a good hot dog, for the right occasion, but I do also believe in the fabric of this country, which is not plant-based. All right, I mean, I cannot support this, Joey. I can't.
No, you don't have to. He's done.
I know.
Yeah, he's not. There's nothing to support. He is. I guess you can go support whatever contest that they do. But yeah, he is. He's trading in his participation in the hot dog eating contest as he is aligned with the vegan company in what did I call them? What were they called? Impossible Foods. Yeah, Impossible Foods. So the folks over at Nathan's have said over the years they've accommodated him in multiple ways. He makes good money for eating food for a living, although I don't know about the medical bills that come with that. But he was offered a contract, and they've left the door open, saying that if he wants to return, they will work to make it happen. But he made $200,000 in last year's Nathan's contest. So he's forgoing that. He was also offered a 4-year, $1.2 million contract, apparently. And so foregoing that as well. So Impossible Foods must pay really well to be bypassing all of that and the big contest that you've won 16 years in a row.
You think he's allowed to eat a regular hot dog, just not in public?
Probably.
I'm sure.
Who's going to stop
he's
him?
American, but you know.
You think Impossible's got cameras in his house? Like, that's a real hot dog. You can't do that.
They just need to make sure that when he takes a bite of the Impossible, and that might be why he's good at this, because obviously his taste buds are not really a thing at this point. Because if that was the case, because he doesn't only win. If you look at Joey Chestnut's competitive eating record, he's just the best at hot dogs, but he'll also, he's won, eating giant burritos and chopped salad and all kind of crazy stuff like that.
I think they should change the rules. I know, Craig, they got to go, but I think they should change the rules where you cannot dip it in water. You have to eat it the way it is given to you in a bun and a hot dog. You could put condiments on it, but not to where you mash it down because of water. I think that would be a fair competition.
Well, this needs clear-cut rules, like maybe the shots competition in Omaha. We got to clean these up a little bit and make them all fair and square. But, yeah, there is that note, so that's a little fun before July 4th rolls around in less than a month. Also, elsewhere, the UFL has been ongoing in the background probably for most folks, but maybe on the forefront for a lot of people. But the reason why I bring it up is their championship game is coming up this Sunday. You will have that taking place in St. Louis at the Dome at America's Center on Sunday afternoon. It will be the USFL Conference champion Birmingham Stallions versus the XFL Conference champion San Antonio Brahmas. But that's also not why I mentioned that. I'll remind you of that again on Thursday, most likely, as we take a look ahead at the weekend. But I mentioned the UFL because their MVP was crowned yesterday, and it was one Adrian Martinez, formerly of Nebraska and Kansas State. He is the 2024 league MVP for the UFL. So good on him, and the type of guy who was a fun player in college, couldn't stay healthy, but you talk about these options of these alternative leagues, and here's a guy who obviously thrived and probably wouldn't be playing football otherwise, and he is now the MVP, had the league lead in rushing with 528 yards, number 3 in passing, second in passing touchdowns, number 2 in total offense. He was responsible for 18 touchdowns, 15 passing, 3 rushing, and set a bunch of single-game records as well. So, yeah, Adrian Martinez, your USFL MVP.
I'm happy for him. He's a really good dude, explosive as he could possibly be. The expectations on him were monstrous when he arrived, when Scott Frost did. Good for him. I'm happy for him. By the way, that San Antonio team, Sam Tecklenburg, Katie Cannon, and Jordan Williams, former Baylor players. And there's other Big 12 teams listed on their roster too, but I thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, so, good for all those guys that are taking part, and that's a big deal for Adrian Martinez and a cool little accomplishment when you thought that maybe those days were over for him. Meanwhile, speaking of a former Baylor guy, this has been a Chiefs guy on the forefront of a lot of people's mind, but B.J. Thompson.
Yep.
Maybe you heard the story about him. He was sent to the hospital in an emergency situation after going into cardiac arrest at OTAs last week with the Chiefs. He was in the hospital for 4 days, but now he has been released, and Tom Pelissero reported on Monday night that he's returned home. He had a statement through his agent, Chris Turnage, that said the family thanks everyone for their prayers and wants to especially thank the Chiefs medical and training staff for their rapid response and professionalism throughout the situation. So, just an update there. We got to cover him a little bit. He eventually transferred, but he was a Matt Rule guy, and there was a lot of hopes and expectations for him. He didn't quite, just for whatever reason, click and ended up at SFA, but got his NFL shot, and he was a guy who was always looked at as having the potential because of his size, his build. That's what Rule and them recruited him based on, was his NFL upside and his measurements. And so sure enough, he made it to the league, but a scary situation. Good news is he's doing okay.
Went to Stephen F. Austin. Played at Stephen F. Austin after he transferred from Baylor. Yep.
Yeah. He ended up with the Lumberjacks.
Did he block a field goal early on in his career? He's a long wingspan, Ashley Hodge wingspan guy. But yeah, heck of a talent, and glad he's doing okay. I'm not sure what his future is now after this incident, but it's good that he's okay.
Yeah, just scary stuff there, but glad he is all right, like you said, and best wishes to BJ and the family. Meanwhile, the cover of the NCAA college football video game was a big to-do, and we saw the multi-man cover that they eventually unveiled, and there's been a lot of stuff trickling out, continuing from the college football video game, but there was a little bit of pro news earlier today as they've unveiled the cover of Madden NFL 25, and it is one Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers, the first ever 49er apparently on the main edition that's sold all over the world. So I don't know where people's Madden cover trivia is, but that was one of the trivia notes that I saw. So yeah, Christian McCaffrey on the cover of Madden 25. And I don't know if the college football buzz is carried over to help Madden out at all. I know the last time I saw a lot of people not loving the gameplay, not loving that they hadn't really done as much with it as they probably could, being an NFL main title, but cool honor for Christian McCaffrey nonetheless.
Yeah, and I hope it doesn't affect him Madden curse-wise.
There's actually been stats run on that.
He's injury-prone anyway.
He is. There's been stats run on that, and that's faded in recent years.
Yeah.
That's not as much of a to-do as it was when it did seem like there was a run of guy after guy who was getting hurt after being on the cover. But you're right. That's still, I think, probably in the back of everybody's mind. And so hopefully good health for Christian McCaffrey. And then final thing is there's not a postseason game on tonight. The NHL and NBA are both off, but the NBA series between the Celtics and Mavs, we know Boston up 2-0, and just a little report out of that. If you want to talk about how you could flip this series on its head, we'll get Kristaps Porzingis on the injured list again. But I don't know how serious this is. He is, though, being reported as day-to-day after suffering a rare torn medial retiniculum, allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon.
Tibulus.
Tibulus tendon.
That's a hard word to say. All of that.
But whatever that means, Kristaps Porzingis is day-to-day, and that's the kind of luck the Mavericks would need at this point to try and get this series going in their direction. But like I said, no postseason games tonight. College World Series doesn't start till later this week, so I'll have a bunch of that on Thursday's edition. But there's a few things off the radar, so watchful eyes, I'm sure, on Kristaps Porzingis and his health moving forward.
Well, he wasn't healthy for the Mavericks, so this is the least he can do.
He's never been.
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about some of these quarterbacks, and so he has been hurt and had a great game one, a pretty good game two. He's a tremendous talent. He just can't stay healthy.
No, he can't, and that's a bummer for Kristaps Porzingis. Boston, I don't think
Super Chat
needs him as much. Thanks, 365. Get cool, and thanks to all the behind-the-scenes folks from Retired Stockbroker. Appreciate that. It could be good news for the Mavericks, but Boston also showed they don't need Porzingis to win.
Yeah,
they're really deep and really good.
Yeah, a lot of different moving parts. They're doing this with Jason Tatum not shooting well. Hasn't really exploded. He's done some of the other
Oh, man,
good
how will
stuff.
Bill Simmons try to put him in his all-time NBA top 5 while not playing well? Man, the efforts, the lengths he goes to try to prop up Boston guys, and they don't need it sometimes. It's dude, there's homers, and then there is Bill Simmons and the Celtics. It is another world.
By the way, I mentioned B.J. Thompson. He blocked.
I mentioned B.J. Thompson.
Well, I'm talking about statistically.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
He had 4 blocks, I think, during his sophomore year. 2 punts, a field goal, and an extra point. He's long, rangy type player, and one of those guys' rule would have sent him off to the NFL, SFA eventually.
Well, hopefully he's able to play football again, but if that's not the case, I don't know what the health looks like on the other side of things, but just hope he lives a normal life. I mean, cardiac arrest, that is nothing to play around with, obviously, so that was a dicey deal, and not sure if there's a family history or what the case was, but regardless, I just hope he gets healthy, and if he can play football again, that's great too.
All right, one question, by the way, from Dan Miter. Great stuff, Craig. Thank you. How far will corporate sponsorships go? Will teams' names change?
No,
I don't think anything like that.
But there will be logos on everything they're allowed to logo.
Both in college and the NFL? The NFL?
Well, I mean, the NFL
doesn't need to
do it. I mean, if you look at one of the reasons we get tired of commercials in the NFL season, especially if you watch the ticket like I have for all these years, they sell 7 massive sponsors.
Right.
And then so you're going to see, whoever's the official beer, the official phone, the official whatever down the line. So you get tired of those. The NFL doesn't do that because they keep it narrow, so they're just going to say, like, oh, really? You would like to be the official soft drink? Well, Pepsi's paying this much.
Yeah.
And then somebody's like, well, you know what? It's time for Squirt. We're gonna bow up.
Yeah.
So
I don't think. Yeah, I think it'll be one of like. Did you notice? Do you know what the Celtics corporate logo is on their jersey?
I actually saw it and read it and thought about it, and I forgot it.
And then, but it goes like I used to be so like because I was thinking like soccer and NASCAR, and that can get really kind of out of hand where that like dominates the jersey. I don't think that'll be the case in college football. I think if they did anything, it'll be like a bowl patch, even though those can be ridiculous.
Yep.
But I think it'll be NBA-like or MLB-like, where it's, on a sleeve or on the chest, and it will kind of just blend in with everything. It'll be on the field. Like, if you take notice of those things, I think you'll definitely notice that. But, like, do you know every sponsor behind your coach when he does a press conference? Like, that's always there. We don't get bothered by that. But, whatever they can slap it onto, I think they will. But I don't think that they will touch, like, the helmets or, I don't think they'll soccer it up where that becomes, like, the main thing across the chest is Vistaprint against, versus it being Oklahoma.
Vistaprint, Boston, Chime is Dallas.
Yeah.
And those have changed over the years.
Yeah, no,
but everything else is up for grabs.
Yeah, this state, like, so-and-so at so-and-so field is about to happen.
That's about to happen a lot.
That's going to happen a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
but not the Dallas loves Cowboys or something.
No. Or
we need to go. We
Yeah.
need to go. We got a lot. No.
I'm going to call Sam right now, so we don't have to worry about that. So we're caught up, but we're
any
fine.
European or Real Madrid or anyone like that. Anybody in soccer?
I would love to see a Nippon Ham Fighters in baseball. That's the one I think of when I think of you're named after the sponsor.
Yeah.
What's your question exactly?
Are any teams that are in the upper echelon of European soccer, the alphas, do any of them have a sponsor attached to them?
Oh, yeah, they all have sponsors.
No, their name. Like
no,
I didn't think so.
There's like the New York Red Bulls and MLS that there's like obviously that kind of a tie-in, but like that's also the mascot. So no, I don't think you're gonna see like East Carolina become the credit card brokers or anything like crazy. I think it'll be
the Holiday Inn Pirates or something like that.
Yeah, I think it'll be just as classy as they can probably do it. I'm sure because it's college sports, somebody will take it farther than somebody else, and then that'll be matched in whatever. But I don't think it'll be like soccer jerseys because I think there is a point where you can push and push and push on your faithful fan bases. But there's some things you don't tweak, and I think you start messing with uniforms and that kind of tradition. I think that's where you would turn a lot of people away, actually.
All right. Thank you very much. Off the radar every Tuesday and Thursday. Sam Kahn with us, 365 Sports from theathletic.com. Sam, thanks for your time. Earlier in the show, we did the list of over-under wins in the Big 12, and K-State and, of course, Utah at the top. Paul did his rankings that he sent in today to the Big 12. I'll do mine tomorrow, etc. Was it easier this year, even though more teams, to fill that thing out top to bottom for you?
Harder, honestly, to me, because ranking them when slotting them 1 to 16 is really difficult. The way I look at it, and to make it easier for myself, is do it in tiers. And so I say Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State are my top tier. And then that next tier is Kansas, Iowa State, Arizona, and so on and so forth. So I think if you think of it in that way and you group teams together that you think are likely to finish in a particular place, then it makes it a little easier to digest. But in some ways, with the old 10-team league, or I guess, last year was 14, but in the old 10-team league, you knew everybody was going to play everybody. And this becomes even more complicated because now everybody's not playing everybody. So it makes it a real challenge, but at the same time, I think what we do, and I know you guys do the same, is you look at the rosters, you look at the situation, the coaching stability and all that, and you try to figure out just who the best teams are and go from there.
Sam, this was like when I did it today, it took me about 6 to 7, maybe like 6.5 drafts to be fair. And I think that from my 4th team to my 9th team is a razor-thin margin like I wouldn't even have thought of before.
Yeah, I would agree because I think when I think of the conference title contenders, I think Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas. And then you have that group of Iowa State, Arizona, West Virginia, Texas Tech, UCF, TCU. And, buddy, those teams could all finish a number of ways. And I dare I say I might even throw Colorado in there because I do like what they did in the portal this offseason, and I do think they're going to be better. So you really have about 7 teams, I think, maybe 8, that in that middle group that could be anywhere from what you would consider dark horse title contenders to teams that maybe are fighting for a bowl game at the end of the year.
Sam, Oklahoma State's mentioned in that top tier. So I'm trying to decide, like, who, I guess they're not totally disrespected, but it still feels like we still kind of sell Oklahoma State short. And yet they've maybe been the most consistent of any Big 12 team since the Big 12 started, not named Oklahoma or Texas. So why do you think that is? Do they just kind of get lost behind the Sooners for forever? Is it because they've never gotten like over that ultimate hump? Or is it just because the picture of consistency is kind of boring?
I think it's a combination of things. One, I think it's easy to forget them because, like you said, they've been in Oklahoma's shadow for a while. And they haven't, even though they have been a picture of consistency, they haven't been a team that has consistently won the Big 12. That they played for it and they've been in the mix, but they haven't won it consistently. And so I think that's one reason why they kind of fly under the radar. The other is sometimes I think they are just the picture of expect the unexpected. Sometimes I feel like when we expect them to be really good, they're not.
Right.
And then when we expect them to not be very good, then all of a sudden they're really good. And sometimes that even happens in the course of one season. Take last year as an example. I thought they were going to be a probably 6 or 7 win team, maybe, fighting to get a bowl game. And I felt very vindicated in that 2 or 3 weeks into the season after what we saw on the field. And then they turn around and end up playing in the Big 12 championship game. I think in this new version of the league, they are going to be a team that plays in that Big 12 conference championship game a lot more frequently than they have in the past. And I do think this year, with all the starters back that they have and the production and, again, some of the stability on the staff, yeah, I think they're a team that you have to think of as a factor and force now, and one that as long as Mike Gundy is there and doing what he does, I think they're a team you have to consider in that group long term.
Is there anybody that is not a part of those first 2 tiers that you feel like can crack that? Or will they need some breaks, or possibly a team or 2 above them has something go wrong with injuries?
The team that I look at, and gosh, I hate to do this because I felt like we got burned by it last year, but the team that kind of not in the top 2 tiers that I think that could make a jump is Texas Tech. And I think a lot of it's going to come down to just quarterback, because I wonder if they don't have the injury issues at quarterback in the last 2 years, and particularly last year, do they win a couple more games? Do they squeak out another game or 2 that they ended up losing because they had to, Baron Morton was banged up and Chuck was banged up, and they had to go to Jake Strong, their freshman at one point. I look at all that they bring back on offense with, if Morton's healthy, Taj Brooks, obviously we talked about Micah Hudson, a receiver who Joey McGuire thinks is going to be a day one contributor. And then again, you talk about stability on that staff. They only lost one full-time assistant on that staff. And you like the way they've recruited the last couple of years. They've brought in a recruiting class that ranks in the top 2 or top 3 of the conference each of the last 2 years. And so you should start to see some of the fruits of that labor. You should start to see those players start to blossom. That the first Joey McGuire recruiting class, you should start to see some of those guys really contribute. Even some of the guys from last year's class, maybe start seeing some of those guys really make an impact. Thought they did a solid job in the portal. That's a team that probably can make a jump. The other one I would be curious about, and I'm watching really closely, is TCU, because we saw what their ceiling was in 2022. Of course, we saw what their floor was last year. Can they get back? And if they bounce back, can they get to a level, not necessarily a team that wins the title, but are they a team that's going to be in the mix that could find themselves playing for a berth to the title game in November.
Texas Tech does a great job of, the brand, like the stadium updates and things like that. But it also feels like they've maybe, I don't know, Sam, like maybe not hyped as much because of kind of how last year went. And as a result, I think maybe less people think about them, and almost in a beneficial way, they're kind of like lying in wait almost in a good way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I totally think there's some buyer's remorse last year, because I think we all scooped up Joey McGuire's confidence. He's got a ton of charisma, but he was not shy about expectations, and that was probably too soon for that. I don't think they were ready, but we all like to look for who's the trendy next pick to come out of nowhere, and we were probably a year too soon on that. And again, you look at the way they finished the year, you wonder if they're healthier, then does that make a difference? Now that health doesn't make a difference when they're opener. They opened against Wyoming and lost on the road. They shouldn't have. That was a game that I saw a lot of mistakes and self-inflicted wounds that if they erase those, maybe they win that game and maybe things are different. But that's going to be really honestly the onus on this team is, can they avoid things like that, the penalties that kill drive or extend opponent's drive. Don't beat yourself. If they don't do that, yeah, this is a team that could be in that mix. But yeah, I agree with you that there's going to be some caution on them because so many of us went in on them last year and then they didn't really live up to it.
Because when I was filling out 1 through 16, and then I realized I have Texas Tech, I don't know, mine's going to be released tomorrow, somewhere like 8 or 9. I'm like, man, for the expectations and what they've been able to do in the 2 or 3 years there, they always have closed well. And then last year, of course, got smoked by UT, but still played well in the bowl game. That's weird now with these conferences, Sam, of 16 and 18 teams, and a team might be pretty good and they're like 9th in a preseason or might finish 9th. That's nuts.
Yeah, it's what makes this so awkward with these huge super conferences and all these weird fits and the different schedules and everything. West Virginia is a team, Justin Williams my colleague did a Big 12 early power ranking last month and had West Virginia in 8th. West Virginia went 9-4 last year, and they bring back their starting quarterback, and they bring back a decent amount of talent. It's wild to think that there are teams that are, like you said, legitimately good that could finish basically in the middle of the conference or even maybe in the back half of the conference. I'd be curious to see how many teams in the league go to a bowl game. That's going to be fascinating to watch. But I do think that the consensus is there's that top tier, like we said earlier, the top Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, and I think if you want to argue Kansas, I won't doubt you on that. I think a lot of that again depends on Jalen Daniels' health and quarterback health. But yeah, there's a lot of those teams that any of these teams that we're talking about, especially in the second tier, could win 9 games or could win 5 games. I guess it wouldn't shock me for many of them if they went either way.
Sam, the picking the all-conference team is always a hard thing to do, particularly along the offensive lines and things like that, because, one, they make you just pick offensive linemen and not a center and 2 guards and 2 tackles, which I hate. And you had to find a fullback on this list. Again, only one team lists one on their actual depth chart if they release depth charts anymore. That's another problem. But with the transfer portal, this has become really difficult, especially guys coming in. I personally, I put LeJontay Wester as one of my wide receivers because he's going to catch 100 passes. He's a machine at that. But it's really hard to, determine these things, especially with all these new players coming in.
Yeah, that's the other thing. And I think the old way you used to do it was when you looked at a preseason team, you looked at, okay, who do they bring back? Who has the most production and who seems to be ready to take that next step? Well, gosh, you can't really do that anymore because there aren't that many guys that are returning from a lot of these teams. There's the Oklahoma States are the outliers that have so many guys coming back, and because there's so much roster turnover. So it really does make it difficult. But again, I think that just puts the onus on us to evaluate, okay, what did this person bring to his previous team? What's his talent level? And it's more in some ways, I think it's more projecting the talent level. Like I saw somebody put an all SEC preseason team the other day or whatever and had Isaiah Bond on it for Texas, which like Isaiah Bond has not played a snap at University of Texas, but clearly if you watch him play at Alabama, you know he's superbly talented. And you know in that offense he's going to fit really well. And so he should, in theory, be an impact player. But that's and it makes it even harder now too. Like you said, guys aren't really even depth charts as much. When's the last time I saw a spring prospectus from a program? We don't see many of those from programs anymore because guess what? If you put that out in March, half the roster may be gone and when spring ball's over. So, you don't have as much access to practice. So it really does make it a challenge. And I'll tell you the ones who I feel bad for are the ones who publish these preseason magazines where their print deadlines are in May and June. And there's still roster moves being made after those things go to print. So it really is a crapshoot to a certain degree.
And spring games are evolving where they're not even necessarily what they used to be, and that information that you get from that may not even matter because those guys might transfer out right afterwards, or you might not even hold an event or whatever the case may be. Sam, I know this is not like it's something you can answer for sure or not, but we were talking about it earlier, like everybody's putting out their playoff predictions. Everybody's putting out this and that in the summertime. And a lot of these projections for the college football playoff is just interesting to see, like the balance of the conferences or maybe the lack thereof. How difficult do you anticipate, or how much difficulty did maybe you gather from people in the Big 12 of, more often than not, every year they're going to have one team, but how difficult do you think it will be in most years to get more than one team for a league like the Big 12 with the way things are currently set up?
It's going to be fascinating because I think we're going to have to change how we think about what a playoff team is, because we thought in the 14 playoff era, a playoff team is an undefeated team or a one-loss team. I don't believe we ever had a two-loss team get in there. We're going to have two-loss teams now that are in these spots, and in some cases, probably if you're SEC or Big Ten, three-loss teams. That's going to change the whole dynamic. And what is going to be the most fascinating to see for me is how does the committee value, let's say, a three-loss Ole Miss versus a two-loss Kansas State, if neither of them won their conference championship. That's going to be the question. And I do think how many of these Big 12 teams are going to be able to go through? That's the other thing. How many Big 12 teams are going to be able to go through with only a couple losses? Because I would stand to reason that if you're a three-loss Big 12 team, you're probably not getting in unless you win the conference spot. So you're going to basically have to be a 10-2 team or 11-2 team to get in. How many of those is the Big 12 going to have at the end? Are they going to have enough to get two teams in? If they do, then I do think the Big 12 will have a decent shot at getting them in. But as we all know, this is a subjective process by 13 individuals looking at things. They're looking at things objectively, but the opinion at the end of the day is subjective on what they determine and value the most on eye test versus strength of schedule. We're going to have the same conversations that we had in the 14 playoff for the 12 team. It's just we're eliminating 6 of those spots because 6 of those spots should be guaranteed by winning your conference, which is a beautiful thing. But those at-large spots are going to be very much subject to the same arguments that we had in the past. And the Big 12, I would love to see them get multiple teams in every year, but I think when they're going to push them up against a loaded SEC schedule, yeah, I think that not that I love it this way, but I think the committee oftentimes is probably going to give the nod to the SEC teams if we need no other reason to look for it than Alabama getting in over an undefeated Florida State. Yep. I mean, I feel like you'll almost reverse engineer your reasoning to get the result that you ultimately think, because this is who you think the team is deserving, regardless of whether they are.
Do you think at some point in the first 2 or 3 years of this, and again, we got to let this thing play out, but how good would it be for the morale of everybody else but the SEC and the Big Ten if they have one of those like an FSU Alabama situation and they pick somebody else, not the SEC team, that might be their 4th or 5th team?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. It would be nice to see some other conference get the benefit of the doubt. It would be nice to see some other team or program that usually doesn't get that get it. But that is, again, the one beauty of this playoff is that, A, you're going to be able to earn your way in and not be denied if you win your conference, which is a huge plus, especially with a spot. But also, I will feel less bad about a team getting left out from an at-large perspective if you're talking those 6 at-larges versus, spot number 5 or 6 in the 4 team, because getting left out of the 4 was really hard because there were years where there were probably more than 4 teams that were deserving. There are some years there are probably less than 4 teams deserving. But in this case, it's not to say that the belly aching will go away, but I feel less bad about team number 13 getting left out as opposed to team number 5 or 6.
Sam, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll see you in Vegas. Is that right?
No, Justin Williams will be there in Vegas. I will be in Dallas for SEC Media Day.
Really?
He got in, Sam. They Craig and I have a theory that it's because we, especially, look, you mentioned the Florida State thing. After that happened, I was not all that kind to Premier Sankey. So, I think maybe we've been blacklisted.
You guys, because of your comments about the SEC and Sankey, got us rejected.
Yeah.
I did reach out to somebody. In fact, John Bianco, UT, who's being honored as a Hall of Famer now with his in the business he is in media relations. I said, hey, we've been pretty good to you. I've known John for 30-plus years. I don't know if he's going to go to bat for us or not, but oh well. Hey, Sam, enjoy Dallas. Hopefully we talk to you again before then, and also maybe that week. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. I'll take care.
Thank you. You too. That's Sam Kahn. Great dude. TheAthletic.com, and many things on how the politics still will always be there when it comes to the college football playoff. But you know what? Just go win big games and eliminate some of that from being used against you. Go win some of those games against dudes. Go win a playoff game or two the first year. Don't just shut out. But
yeah, it was TCU did a lot of good for the conference, but then there was also the fact that the conference was changing. So it was like you couldn't grab momentum and say, now there's another team competing with an Oklahoma or with a Texas, but then Texas and Oklahoma are now leaving. So it's like, and then they followed it up, unfortunately, with the showing against Georgia that just, instead of it being like this big gain, it like wiped out every piece of the game and then set them back if somehow that's possible, making the national title game. So, yeah, that was a doozy for the Frogs.
Even though they beat a pretty damn good Michigan team,
yeah,
it didn't matter.
That won the title the next year.
Oh, yeah, did they? Oh, but what about Georgia? All right, one note of breaking news in golf real quick. John Rahm, who's a part of LIV right now, is out. I saw this kind of starting up 2 or 3 days ago. He will not play in the U.S. Open this week at Pinehurst. He's got a foot injury. Yes. He doesn't feel like he can get through the tournament.
An infection between the one that got no roast beef and the one that went wee all the way home.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope it's not gout.
No, I mean, I hope not. But so he's
that's a hell of a player, but he's out of the U.S. Open. We'll have Rob Bolton on tomorrow for us to do our picks. And we never did bring up the fact that I did win the PGA Championship by one shot over Craig on the final putt when Schauffele made it to win it.
Yes.
We were like 48 under par.
We brought it up, but you were not here.
Yeah, that could have been any time in the last month.
Yes, you were not here. You were recovering. You and I watched that together. It was with Jennifer. It was very fun.
That was a lot of fun. All right, when we come back, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, Paul's Top 5 around the corner. Much to get to. We're not done. 365 Sports. And Marco's Pizza. Father's Day mega meal deal for only $19.99. You can get a large one-topping pizza, cheesy bread, and Cinna squares for $19.99. You can go online and order that. Use the code word mega meal. Marco's Pizzas Father's Day mega meal. Pizzoli, $5.99 each as far as an order. You can order that online as well, and that code word is Pizzoli, Pizzoli. Traditional or boneless wings. I like the bone-in wings. Plain buffalo, garlic, parmesan, or barbecue. Marco's Pizza has that available for Father's Day, and specialty pizzas as well. Own you could also be a part of a franchise. If that's something you've ever thought about, territories available. It's the largest, or it's the fastest growing pizza brand in America. And for a limited time only, $9.99 for the Pepperoni Magnifico, a pizza, a pie on the top that is covered from wall-to-wall pepperoni, like basically double pepperoni pizza. Use PepMag as the code. Bob Mock, the owner, 5 locations in Waco. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Make this the summer of Dodge at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive away in a 2023 Dodge Charger or Challenger RT with $13,000 off MSRP, or the powerful Charger GT and save $10,000. Get a stunning 495 horsepower Scat Pack for an amazing $9,000 off MSRP. Plus, enjoy 90 days to make your first payment. That's 90 days with no payments. Hurry into Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
All right, this 5 o'clock hour, moving to the midway point. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, joins us on 365 Sports. John, I saw you post something, I guess it was yesterday, with Wade Phillips enjoying a championship win and also talking to Hakeem Butler, who played at Iowa State in the Big 12, by the way. Your thoughts about what? He just loves to coach, right?
He does love to coach, and he'll do it till he takes his last breath. Of course, he'd like to be in the NFL, but this was the opportunity he got. He's Coach of the Year. He was doing his post-game interview because the Bombers are in the championship game, and he told Butler, Hakeem Butler had a cup of coffee in the NFL. You deserve to be in the NFL. And I'll guarantee you that got so much attention that teams will be trying to sign Butler, and he may get a little bit of a signing bonus that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And it's interesting because the Texas High School Coaches Association coaching school this year is in San Antonio, and the Gridiron Legends of Texas are going to be there with the Texas Bowl. And I'm honored because they've asked me if I would moderate a panel at the coaching school that includes Mean Joe Green, Kenny Houston, Michael Bishop, the quarterback. When Michael was a backup with the Patriots, he was in training camp. He was ahead of a guy named Brady. And then they have the guy that may be the most popular, the current United Football League Coach of the Year, Wade Phillips. And Wade's going to be there too. And I may introduce him that way and say, oh, yeah, he coached in the NFL as well.
John, on Mean Joe Green, I would like you to ask him, and this is a story that the late Leroy Coleman, who was the coach at University for 1,000 years, told me, because they were high school teammates, that one time after a game that Temple Dunbar lost, one of the star players from that team was on the bus and eating an ice cream cone and decided to taunt Joe about beating them as opposed to just leaving well enough alone. And Joe went and put that ice cream cone right in his face.
Well, there's a reason Joe Green's nickname was Mean Joe Green. And one of the things you do not want to do is, it's like if a tiger's in a cage and you rattle that cage, what's that tiger going to do? Well, that's the way Joe was. And I'm also honored to say that the Lone Star Luncheon at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame on July 24th, I will be the moderator for about an hour with Joe Green. I'm glad you told me that, because I'm going to ask him. And before I do that with Joe, I'm going to call some of his close friends, a friend of mine who covered him with the Steelers, and see if I can find more stories like that. And, of course, one of the things fans in Waco I guess they'll want to hear is about the Steelers beating the Cowboys in the Super Bowl twice. And then, of course, Joe's Steelers beat the Oilers 2 times in the AFC Championship game. And even though he's from Temple, played at North Texas, and lives in the Metroplex, he shouldn't be popular in Texas because of all the misery that he helped deal the fans in the Metroplex and Houston as well. But it's going to be a great event. I can't wait to do it because I like to interview people that people don't know a lot about. And that ice cream story is just what I'm looking for.
So I just thought about this while you were talking about Mean Joe Green. I know it's out of left field, but you've had such a long storied career. John, what athlete do you feel like has had the biggest impact on your career?
Well, I'll say this, Craig. When I was growing up in 1960, when I was 8 years old, the Cowboys and the Oilers came in to being, and the Cowboys were terrible. The NFL didn't help them at all when it came to an expansion franchise, and they were boring, and they tied one game. Where the Oilers came in, George Blanda, Hall of Fame quarterback, throwing it all over the place, had Billy Cannon at running back, Charlie Tolar, Charlie Hennigan. They had great teams, and they won first 2 championships. And as a kid, you want to see scoring and you want to see passing. So I loved George Blanda back then. But then when the Cowboys started winning, the person that I think had the biggest impact on me being such a sports fan and making it a career was Roger Staubach. And because Captain America, that's the way he was for, probably hundreds of thousands of people through the decades. And I've gotten to know Roger, and I still can't believe when I'm talking to him or interviewing him that I'm interviewing Roger Staubach. And I had a long conversation with him on the phone this year and telling stories and talking about when they were in Minnesota. And of course, Drew Pearson would never mention that he pushed off. But I'm thinking if Roger afterward, when they asked him about the play, and he said, all I did was say a couple of Hail Marys and throw it. If he'd not used Hail Mary, one of the greatest nicknames in the history of sports would not have been born. And so I would say him. And of all the players that I've covered going back to 1977 with the Oilers, of the Love You Blue Oilers, the one I most admired was Earl Campbell, but the one I've come to respect the most through the decades is their quarterback, Dan Pastorini. And then the Love You Blue era, when they had Warren Moon and Mike Munchak, Bruce Matthews, and they went to the playoffs 7 years in a row but couldn't get to the Super Bowl, it would be Warren Moon. So going back, Staubach, I'm a front runner. I like quarterbacks, obviously. When I was a kid and the Cowboys played and I saw Eddie LeBaron play quarterback, and Eddie LeBaron was about 5'5", I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to play quarterback for the Cowboys. If Eddie LeBaron can do it, I can do it too.
John, was there one player that was during the Love You Blue years? Brazil, Earl, I think Curly Culp, and I don't know who else is a part of the Hall of Fame. I guess one of the
Elvin Bethea.
Elvin Bethea, yeah. Is there anybody that is not in the Hall of Fame during that stretch that you think has been overlooked?
Every one of those players, and I see most of them quite a bit. They all do a lot of charity appearances. I'm in the Gridiron Legends of Texas with them, so we have a lot of appearances with players and coaches from all over Texas, and they all tell me, because I'm on the Hall of Fame selection committee, you got to get White Shoes in the Hall of Fame, Billy White Shoes Johnson. Well, Billy was one of the greatest returners in history. He was a wide receiver, but he wasn't a great receiver. And then when Devin Hester became our first true returner as part of this year's class, when Devin Hester made it, then I said, okay, I'll give White Shoes a chance. And so that's the one, Billy White Shoes Johnson, who did the funky chicken when he scored. And anybody interested in a fun guy, go to Google or just put in there Billy White Shoes Johnson and watch some of the things he did. He was a 15th round draft choice. Imagine that they had 15 rounds. I think it was 16 rounds at the time. He was a 15th round pick from Widener College somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania.
I remember a guy before him that was doing some of that celebration, Elmo Wright of the Kansas City Chiefs. But Billy White Shoes took it to a different level.
Well, Elmo, David, it made history. And Elmo, I see him because he's a member of the Gridiron Legends of Texas. Elmo Wright started the end zone dance. And what he did was one time he caught a touchdown pass and he just ran in place. But by running in place, somebody saw that and said, well, you know what, I'm going to do a little more. And then all of a sudden they came up with names. And I think it's exciting. I love watching end zone dances. A lot of people don't. But Elmo Wright is the father of the end zone dance. If people don't like it, blame him.
Well, I have to admit this is my senior year, my last game I ever played. In a loss, we blocked a punt. I picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown, and I did the Elmo Wright.
Did you really?
Yeah, I
That's
did.
hilarious.
I just loved that dance. It was about the only time I ever was in the end zone,
Hold
too.
on.
Yep.
I'd like to see you do this. Do the funky chicken where you got to do the splits. Could you have done that?
Oh yeah, no, I can't. No, I would not be able to go. Once I bent down low, I would not be able to get back up again. I would be
kind of like
frozen.
Paul Catalina when playing softball. He had to
Here we go. I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
Paul was hauling ass around third base.
Yeah, I felt good. I did that only to spite. The saddest part about that is we were winning like 22-4. And I did it only to spite Q because he and I were talking trash the entire time. And that was my first old man, not my last, but my first old man injury.
Yeah, I had a like tore
but
out.
You were still a young man.
I had just turned. I was 39 when that happened. So I was like, that was the harbinger of the 40s right there. Of like, all right, you can't do things like you used to.
Yeah, that was queuing you up for the 40s.
Yeah. I called up one of my best friends and I told him what happened. He goes, here's your problem. He goes, you play sports now at 85%. He's like, you can't give 100% because you'll hurt yourself. 85% is 100% for 40-year-olds.
Yeah. No, there you go. John, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time.
Guys, thank you, and take them.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, most every Tuesday at around 5:30 with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, right now in the NFL, there's just so much like
mini camp
crap. Whereas like this guy's not here. Well, gee, I wonder what he wants. Let me guess, more money?
Yep.
Would that solve the issue? Yes, it would. Oh, well, imagine that, because that's basically what the storylines are right now. And guys getting healthy and whatnot. But yeah, we're still a few weeks away, I think, from the drum starting to really beat for the NFL.
Yeah, and like Aaron Rodgers isn't at the Jets mini camp. That's the only interesting story I want to hear, because where he is probably freaking weird.
Yeah.
So I just want
he's in a cave in Tahiti.
No, you're right. But I didn't even I get mixed up. They started changing all what they could do in the offseason, and I lost interest on keeping up what they did in the offseason, which is what the NFL has done, is make sure everyone keeps up with them during the offseason, but not when it comes to when they're actually official or not, contracts or whatever. I kind of glanced through
like
it.
the Dak thing, for example. Sorry, but the Dak thing, I just feel like I've heard this story for like 5 summers in a row of him in a contract, and I'm like, okay, so what are they going to do? They going to cut him? No, he's going to be the quarterback. Guess what? He's going to get a new deal. Like, I mean, am I?
It only gets truly, truly interesting if we're talking about this in March.
Right.
And if it's February.
Of next year.
Yeah. So if we're in February, March, if we're postseason now, post Super Bowl, and the Cowboys still haven't gotten this done, then you're like, this deadline makes deals thing is really getting stupid.
Yeah.
But, and at that point, I think we may even know that, like, the Cowboys have decided, we're blowing it up.
We'll have a whole season to go off of. And so they either had a great run or they stunk up the joint, and they're finally like, it's time to depart with Dak. But I saw, God love her, Jane Slater, like a week ago. I was on when we were out on vacation / funeral duty. And, I get that it feeds the beast, because clearly hundreds of, not thousands of people love everything Cowboys or, Chiefs or whatever. But she's like, CeeDee Lamb's not at, OTAs or whatever. And it's like, yeah, and he'll be there for game number 1, and he'll be the best receiver on the field. And it doesn't matter that he's not there for this little workout. But I get that that's part of the drama of the summer and storylines and
it's part of the negotiating
process. Of course, there's the business side to it that's actually very legitimate. But, I just find it like, he's holding out for more money. He's not going to be at the workouts unless he's just, that kind of guy who wants to do that. But I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on right now with the NFL. We're in that little pocket of time, I think, before training camp.
When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5. This is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. Home of a 48-foot walk-in humidor. Padron, Cohiba, Ashton, Macanudo, Romeo, and Julieta. You name it, they have it. The best elite, high-level, world-ranked cigars inside their 48-foot walk-in humidor. My favorite brand is Rocky Patel. They have many different Rocky Patel cigars for you. And Vita Dreams, a CBD product that helps you fall asleep a lot easier and more restful at night. Say you got a lot on your mind, financial, health, emotional, just a really busy week and you're tossing and turning a lot. Vita Dreams will help you find a way to, just when you're ready to go to bed 30 minutes or so, hour before, take a Vita Dream, a gummy or 2, and you'll be just fine. Think about when the alarm goes off and you go, man, I just wish I had another 30 minutes. Well, you'll get that extra 30 minutes. Try Vita Dreams. THC product for very chronic serious pain. And then also fresh coffee beans. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center. New owner is Josh. Cheyenne is still there in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Cars priced right both day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Bienvenidos al Primo Cinco de Pablo Catalina, presented by Texas Beef House. By the way, almost bilingual. Almost. This close. This close. I can understand Spanish very well. I don't speak it very well, as you just heard there. But this is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Make sure that you use our promo code SICK'EM10 when you make your first order for 10% off. Top 5 new offensive coordinators who hold the head coach's job in their hands. Number 5. Oops. See, today it's going too fast. Yesterday it was going too slow. Jake Spavital at Baylor. His impact on this roster this season cannot be overstated, because if they don't start scoring points and being fun on offense, then Dave Aranda is probably in some trouble. Even though Mack Rhodes has told us countless times that's not at all in his thought process. But if Baylor fails to make a bowl again, then the heat's going to get turned up on Dave Aranda. And Dave Aranda has taken over the defensive side himself, essentially. But the offensive side stays with Jake Spavital, and he's bringing in a new system. He's making it more like it was back when Baylor won multiple conference titles. So we'll see how that works. They brought in a whole bunch of new talent. There is still concerns on the offensive line, especially considering how deep into the portal window they kept trying to get guys to help that depth along the front. But if he can improve that even a little bit, and they can start making plays, especially with playmakers on the outside, that's going to make the offense a lot better, and we'll probably get Baylor to a bowl game. They just need to be 15% better than they were last year, and they're going to go to a bowl game. As bad as last year was, they had spots where if they had schematically the right system for their players and just some better decisions, they probably at least go 6-6, if not a little bit better than that. Number 4, Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. You say, Paul, how does he hold his own life in his hand? Well, he is also the offensive coordinator. So, since he's the new OC and the offensive coordinator, Mississippi State's success in his career holds solely in his hands. Really, I should maybe be doing this for the defensive coordinator on that side of the ball, on the other side of the ball, but I just thought this was interesting, as one of the new offensive coordinators in the country is Jeff Lebby, and he holds his own offensive fortunes in his own hands. So while it's the first year, you know, he's probably not going to get run out, but still, that's probably going to be true as long as he's the offensive coordinator. I just thought it was weird and wanted to throw him on the list. I think he'll do fine, but again, we'll see. Number 3, Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State. Now you say, Paul, James Franklin's one of the best head coaches in the country. He's never really questioned. Penn State is thrilled with him, but offensively, they are one of the most bland teams in the country. Now, we'll get to the most bland team in the country in a second. Don't worry about that. I think you all know who number 1 is going to wind up being. But James Franklin had some heat come down on him this year off the field when it came out that he had been interfering with the medical staff and had to pay out on a lawsuit. Andy Kotelnicki comes in to make people forget about those slight little off-the-field transgressions that don't really mean much if you're winning, but if you're constantly losing to Ohio State and Michigan and teams in bowl games that are more offensively diverse than you, then you're going to have a problem. Andy Kotelnicki comes in, he'll install the wide zone into the Penn State offense, and hopefully for the Lions, they can roll on through and start scoring some points and winning some games that they're not picked to win. That's been their problem. they're kind of the Texas A&M of the Big Ten right now. I'm not wrong. I'm going to tell you. I think that's a very fair comparison. Garrett doesn't have his headset on, but I think it's a fair comparison.
Haven't thought about it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. I'll give you that.
Tons of hype. Everybody expects something from them.
The quarterback.
But when it comes down to them making the move and winning the conference, James Franklin doesn't really do that. He's just a more open-minded coach, and I know after all that happened with the doctors this offseason, that probably falls on deaf ears. But as far as adjusting things, for example, bringing in Andy Kotelnicki to run the offense and sending Mike Yurcich out. Number 2, Chip Kelly at Ohio State. Now, this is a home run hire. I think this is going to work out well for everybody. Ohio State is loaded. But if they lose to Michigan for a 4th year in a row, and if they lose to Michigan because they didn't score enough points, then I think Ryan Day, that teeth's going to get turned up slowly and slowly and slowly. So if they lose to Michigan, they better win the national championship to make people forget about that. But if they lose to Michigan and then don't do well in the playoffs, in spite of everything that they've done this year, the heat is going to continually get turned up on Ryan Day because that's what they're out there to do, and you can't just keep losing to Michigan, and you can't lose in the playoff. He has pressure on him. Now, he's not in any imminent danger, but if bringing Chip Kelly in as the offensive coordinator does not work the way that they want it to, and it may not have worked with Bill O'Brien, we don't know, but if that doesn't work, then I do think he's on the hot seat more than a coach with his outstanding record that anybody else in the country would be thrilled with would be. Because, again, his losses are pretty much just to Michigan and a couple of randos out there and, a Missouri team after a bunch of opt-outs in the bowl game. I'm not knocking Mizzou by any stretch of the imagination, but bottom line, it's a different time for him. Number 1, you could also entitle this Durr, Paul. Obviously, it's Iowa, Tim Lester. Now, Kirk Ferentz has earned the right, by most estimations, to go out the way he wants to. Except college football doesn't really work like that. The minute that you get bland, the minute that you get behind, the go out how you want to kind of goes away. And Iowa is entering a new Big Ten. They're still in the Big Ten, obviously. They didn't leave. But the Big Ten is changing all around them. You're adding teams like Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, all of whom will have wide-open offenses. Purdue is trying to make their wide-open offense even more wide open. Nebraska should be getting better with Matt Rule. A lot of things have changed around Iowa, and Iowa has not changed with them because nothing has forced them to change. But how long can you put up with getting right on the cusp of winning the conference and not doing it because the other teams are so much better on offense than you are on defense? Last year's game against Michigan should have been an absolute eye-opener for all Iowa fans. Look, you can win 13-9 a whole bunch of times during the regular season. But when it comes down to it, when you have to be able to score with a team to keep up with them and rely on that great defense to make plays in spots as opposed to carry the whole game, they couldn't do it against a more athletically gifted team. Tim Lester comes in to try to make that happen at Iowa, but things have gotten harder in what is now an 18-team conference, and nobody's going to sit around and wait for Kirk Ferentz, which means to me, having seen this multiple times, saw it with Mac Brown and Will Muschamp, and neither of those guys wound up being the head coach at Texas after a while. Saw it with Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Bowden. It happens a lot where you have a succession plan and you think these are the way things are going to go because you've been the guy for a long time and you've won a lot of games. And Kirk Ferentz has certainly done that. But football is changing around him. And if you go 9-3 in this conference and your 3 losses to the best teams, you are not going to make the playoff as Iowa. Iowa will not have that kind of street cred to get in over a 9-3 team in the SEC or a second 9-3 team that scores more points in the Big Ten. That will be where things divide when they're picking the top 12. Honestly, who would you rather have? A 9-3 Iowa who's lost to all the good teams they've played, or a 9-3, say, Miami team who's lost to Clemson, Florida State, and, say, a Notre Dame in 1 year? I would probably rather have a 9-3 Miami team with a Cam Ward. I don't think Miami plays Notre Dame this year, but you get my point. That, to me, is what's going to start happening. And even though they're the Big Ten and they've got this big backing behind them, would you rather have them at 9-3 or USC at 9-3? If it comes down to it, I bet you they're picking USC and not Iowa, given the fact that they know what happens when Iowa plays somebody who is more athletic than them. The proof's in the pudding. So Kirk Ferentz's style works when you play teams from the frozen north. It does not work when you play teams that move and have athletes like Ohio State and Michigan State back in the day, Wisconsin at their peak, really always kind of beat them. He's got to get ahead, and Tim Lester holds that in his hands. Tim Lester holds that in his hands, and if he can bring something to Iowa and get Cade McNamara and that offense going, it will be something to watch because that defense is always going to be lethal. That's it for the top 5. We're here to wrap it up.
All right, Craig. Paul, thank you very much. Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke. Hey, tomorrow back at it at 3. Paul's triple option at 1 until 2. Emery Winter. Also to Garrett Ross, the intern James, who I haven't seen today. But we'll see him.
He's in Austin. I think he's coming up either tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay, we'll see him here pretty soon, along with Jack McKenzie. So thanks to everybody that is a part of what we do when it comes to sponsors. We appreciate from start to finish, the first day we came on the air to what we have now, what we continue to do to grow. Also, you in the chat room, those who watch and view us, who we don't hear from, but we know you're there as we continue to climb the number of subscribers. I'm David Smoke. Scott Drew and the Drew family, Homer Drew's wife, Janet, Scott's mother passed away, and our thoughts and prayers to the Drew family. I'm David Smoke. Good night.